You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
Coming to you from Magnified Cemeteries, Magnified Pod presents Magnifr Pod, a nostalgic sampling of horror punk albums from the Christian alternative scene. Join us in the pits of hell. I'm Andrew.
And I'm John Powter.
Yeah, I guess I forgot to say that I'm Count Andrew this time.
That's right.
I'm Count Andrew.
And I'm John Powter.
This is our podcast. That's our food line. You know what? I didn't even say that's our food line last week because we got all caught up in our new names that we were.
I think we said that's our food wolf man or something like that.
Did we?
I feel like we acknowledged it in some way.
Did we? I didn't even. I don't remember. You
There's
think
a
I
lot going
remember?
on.
You think I remember last week?
No, never.
Oh my God, that is presumptuous of you. So we have one Magnifr Pod episode under our belts.
Boom.
We've gotten some feedback. We've gotten some. We might need to discuss a little bit about the explanation card from Deadline's album, which
Sure.
It was more of a bummer than I was anticipating.
Yeah, it sucks.
I thought it was just, like Caleb in our Discord was like saying something like, I wish there was at least one explanation that was like, this song's about zombies, and that's
Right.
okay, because it's okay to just have something fun.
Yeah, I think there's maybe one of those, but yeah, for the most part, it's a bummer.
The Vegicide one is a bummer.
Yeah,
all of
it truly
just,
confirms all of our worst suspicions about that song and more. So
yeah, it all sucks. But you know what doesn't suck, John?
What's that?
Seasonal beers
It's true.
for this spooky season.
What you got over there?
I have a Tin Whiskers Brewing Company.
Ooh.
St. Paul, Minnesota. For the real heads out there know about the Tin Whiskers.
Mhm.
It's got a little robot on there.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's a love bot, or
It could be.
but
Hope he doesn't take his revenge.
But so this is a Schottky pumpkin ale with real pumpkin. They 6.6 ABV.
Yeah.
I don't normally do pumpkin ales, but I'm curious. I'm curious after your imperial one that you had last week.
Yeah.
But this has a headless horseman, but the horseman is a robot.
Ooh, yeah, that's cool as hell.
Holding his pumpkin head.
Producer Jason would appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, pumpkin beers are a classic weird beer contender. And so, as you know, my motivation behind beer choices is not so much like, I know I like this, but like, well, I got to try that thing. So real mixed bag in terms of how well they go for me. Last week was an interesting one. This week got another interesting one.
Yes.
When we were in Michigan, as I had mentioned, one of the breweries we hit up was Beer Church Brewing Company, which is in a former church. And I picked up a crowler of their Hammer of the Gourds.
I love
pumpkin pie ale.
Ooh.
Let me read you their description here.
Okay.
Our pumpkin pie ale anticipates blues, metal, folk, and dessert beverages simultaneously while winking at grandma and her pumpkin pie that would always announce the beginning of rock. Brown sugar, lactose, spices, and real pumpkin. and then it gets cut off. But there's real pumpkin in there. Lactose, which I'm not always into, and I know you are not drinking, but
Right.
let's give this guy a shot. Let's see.
Yeah, gonna give this guy a shot too.
That's pretty good. It's very sweet, which is maybe the lactose part of it.
I'm not sure where I land on this.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about a lot of pumpkin beers.
Yeah, I don't. It's not normally my lane. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to adjust my taste buds
Sure.
accordingly. But
yeah,
last week I texted you a picture from a local brewery, and it was a barrel aged cherry sour.
Yeah, that sounded wonderful.
Oh, bro. Like it was another one of those things where I'm like, I was so caught off guard by the wood. There was so much wood was imparted into the beer. I was just I was so caught off guard by how woody it actually was, but I was so into it. And I'm like, this is a John Potter weird beer.
Yeah.
Just a woody cherry sour. Just sounds
It's
up your alley.
That's like Johnny P beer bingo right there.
This has this is weird because it's not sweet. So there's it doesn't really have a bitterness to it either. There's no it's a low bitterness, low IBU. But it also doesn't have it's not a spicy beer either.
Sure. Interesting.
So I'm trying to figure out what it actually tastes like, because it doesn't really taste like much, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, this is my second week in a row that it's more like pumpkin pie focused, which we had speculated there's a lot of pumpkin spice beers out there.
Right.
So maybe it's more that kind of thing. But both of us are drinking beer with actual pumpkin in it tonight, it sounds like.
Yes.
I don't know. Pumpkin beers, mixed bag, fun. Yes. I will always try one, even if they don't always connect for me. Speaking of Michigan beers, my favorite pumpkin beer that I can think of, or at least one of my favorites, is New Holland Brewing Company's Ichabod Ale. Which is great. And I feel like I used to get it all the time, and maybe they're less available now, but that I feel like has a really nice balance for a pumpkin beer. So anyway,
one of the all-timers, is this New Holland? Is Dragon's Milk New Holland?
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
so
God,
good.
An all-timer.
Yeah.
So
talk about bourbony barrel taste.
Oh my God, that's so good.
Yeah.
So delicious. I will stan that beer forever.
Absolutely.
And speaking of beers, John, I don't know if you have ever had the opportunity to go to a beer dabbler.
I don't think so.
In the Twin Cities.
No.
Held at the fairgrounds. My first one was 2018 during February. I came up here to visit, and me and my brother and Mark Hack went to the beer dabbler, and it was like a full-on blizzard.
Oh yeah.
And it was outstanding. I was like, this is the most Minnesotan thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
Drinking beer and just white out blizzard conditions. It was just so delightful, so fun. And I've wanted to go back to for those of you who don't, it's over 160 breweries. You pay for it. You pay for a ticket. You go in. They give you a glass, and you can. So
you dabble in different beers.
Yes,
I see.
Yes. So you get this maybe 3 or 4 ounce glass, and you just go around and you can just drink as many as you want, and it's great. But the prices of tickets have gone up, I suppose. When you get more breweries and more interest, that's bound to happen.
Yeah.
And especially since there really wasn't, a lot of stuff was canceled last year, and probably a lot of breweries have been hurting. But as much as I would like to spend $65 or $70 on a ticket, what me and my brothers and Mark and other friends have decided is you know what, we're going to do our own dabbler. That money that we would maybe spend
Sure.
going out, like we're not going to spend that much necessarily on beer, but like if we did, that'd be like a lot of good beer.
Yeah.
And we don't have to deal with the crowds, and we wouldn't be standing outside in February.
Yeah.
But so this weekend, Dave and Mark and Brian are coming over to my place.
Man,
and
that rules.
I'm hosting my own dabbler.
That's great.
Little adult dude beer drinking slumber party at my place.
Yes. FaceTime me.
Yeah. You got to get your own weird beer, John, and we can
yes.
toast and pretend you're there.
Maybe I'll wear like a necklace with like string cheese and pretzels hanging off it.
You
see people doing that at the
You know the deal. You know the deal. Yeah. You got to have your palate cleanser, have a little snack time.
Absolutely. I've done the Michigan Brewers Guild Winter Beer Fest a couple times, which is a similar deal.
Yeah.
And just the most, again, another classic Johnny Potter bingo card here, but like being outside in the snow and drinking all kinds of beers is like my dream come true. So someday we'll dabble together.
Yes. I called this the first annual Bro Dabbler.
Yes.
So
should make t-shirts, limited merch.
Yeah, can I whip up some merch in the next 2 days?
Yeah, probably.
Everybody bring your own white undershirt, and I'll provide some Sharpies and stencils.
Yeah, exactly. Get those like screen printing things. We can just bang them out. Well, you know what pairs nicely with seasonal drinks?
What's that, John?
Seasonal treats.
Ooh,
some Halloween candy.
Yes, I have my orange pumpkin bucket here. But John, before we get to our shared candy, because we are going to be doing the same candy this week, I need to shout out our girl Mickey, because she texted me yesterday. She's like, "Are you home? I have something for you." And I was like, "Yeah, just come on over." And she's across the street now, so she just walked on over, and she handed me a bag of Spooky Bats and Cats sour gummies from
Mickey,
Trader Joe's.
Coming through as always.
I was so happy because, as I had lamented on the previous episode, my local Trader Joe's did not have it.
Yeah.
But she goes to the Trader Joe's in Arden Hills, and they had it. And so shout out to the Arden Hills Trader Joe's for having the Spooky Bats and Cats. So okay.
What's your review?
Yeah, so you reviewed them last week.
Yeah, I'm a green guy.
I'm very into the green.
Yeah, I think we got green and purple bats and then orange cats, right? That's what we said.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I dislike.
No, they're all good.
I like the purple sort of grape flavored ones, and the orange cats are good.
Yeah, I think that's my order: green, purple, orange. But I like them all. Wouldn't kick any of them out of the coffin.
Oh,
I don't know.
But the orange pops a little bit more than the grape ones do.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's true. I just don't like orange flavor as much as grape, I guess.
I mean, you are a grape daddy after all.
I am. It's true.
But I'm very happy with these. I will continue to snack on these throughout the month.
As
all right,
have I and will I.
Yes.
But tonight, Andrew.
Yes.
These Skittles.
These Skittles, bro,
are scary.
They're not just any Skittles. And this is not one of those bullshit Halloween things where they just put a pumpkin
color
on
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, no. They're not just like scary Skittles or whatever. They're
orange box Junior Mints.
Ooh. The Oreos. They're orange in the middle. They taste the same.
Beware.
So these are called Shriekers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got what looks to be like maybe the Grim Reaper or something.
Yeah, he's shrieking.
It's a skeleton like shrouded in some sort of a
cloak and hood. Yes.
And it says, "Beware, try if you dare. Some are so sour they will make you shriek." Presumably there are some that are sour, others that aren't.
Yeah.
But we need to read off the flavors because
so orange appears to be citrus scream, Lime is shocking lime. You got purple rattled raspberry. Another orange here, spine tingling tangerine, and then another darker green, ghoulish green apple.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, shocking lime is leaves something to be desired, but we couldn't come up with anything that started with L.
Yeah, I failed on brainstorming about that one.
All right, let's see what we got here.
Yeah.
Ooh, here's the thing. They just look like regular Skittles.
Mm.
So there's nothing sour on the outside. It's just a regular shellacked looking Skittle. So which color do you want to try first, John?
I want to try this ghoulish green apple.
All right, what's this one?
Dark green.
Darker green.
No.
Just tastes like green.
Not particularly sour.
No, that's the thing, bro. I don't think all of them are going to be.
Oh, okay. So that's how they get you. They kind of trick you.
I'm gonna try this purple one.
Come on, purple. Oh, that's a regular purple name. Well, it's kind of fun that you got to keep trying them until you stumble upon a scary one.
I think I'm tasting some that are sour.
Well, they're not making me shriek.
They're not making me shriek. They are sour. Some of these are sour.
They're tasty.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What about shocking lime? Let's see if we get shocked. I mean, that does taste sour. I kind of thought they'd be like punch you in the face. Yeah, no, it's not that vibe. All right, what haven't we done? We haven't done tangerine. They are really good. I'm into them. Spine tingling tangerine. You can't tell if that's sour or not. That's fine.
This one is sour. I really like.
Yeah.
I like these.
No, they're really good. Into them.
They're not. I think if you're not accustomed to
Sure.
sour things, or you're not expecting it in a Skittle,
Yeah.
like, oh, this is a little surprising, but
if you put them all in a bowl and you thought you were just getting regular Skittles, but then was sour,
yeah,
you'd shriek, you'd scream. It'd be terrifying.
I think they were amped up a little bit too much for me.
So sour, you'll fucking die. They are good though. I like them.
Yeah.
I think that citrus cream was just sour. Yeah, very good. I guess the fun is that you will be surprised, but yeah, as far as intensity, very low. But
in reality, I mean, I would have been just okay if they got rid of the gimmick and just made them all sour.
Yeah, right. On the other hand,
next to the sour ones, you're like, oh,
right.
This just tastes sort of like subdued and bland.
Right. Yeah, definitely not as sour as the proper sour Skittles. On the other hand, this one has a shrieking skull on the cover of it, so I can't not support that. Yeah, these are tasty.
Shriekers.
Hey,
go to your local Walgreens.
Fortunately, we already know
Mars
Wrigley, supportive of our projects, our important work, but not going to give us any free ones.
Maybe, I mean, there's a phone number, 800 number on here.
Give them a call.
Give them a call.
Leave us a voicemail, leave them a voicemail, say the streets are talking, the people demand sponsorship.
Yep. I mean, come on, Mars. Like what's it gonna take?
Yeah.
Like, we're out here repping your products.
Yep. I'm gonna eat these all episode long. So
yeah.
Get ready, people with misophonia.
Bro, I also I have some other sour candies that
what you got?
I'm not going to reveal it until
good.
Until the next episodes, because
till the next episode. That was Dr. Dre.
Hey, eat Skittles every day.
Good shriekers if you dare. I don't know. Citrus Scream. I had a couple of sour ones of those, and that's surprisingly quite tasty. All right, well, these are a hit. We got our pumpkin beer. We got our shriekers. What goes well with those lovely treats, but some spooky discussion?
Yes.
Last week, we covered some of our first scary movie experiences.
Right.
This week, maybe we can talk about some of our favorites. Now, you're not a big spoopy movie enthusiast.
No, I am not.
But you are a fan of, spoopy adjacent properties.
I am. That is
big
true.
Buffy guy.
Big Buffy guy.
You like some spooky music.
I do.
So
I do like the spooky imagery.
Yeah.
That's the thing. As I was saying last week, I like things that are spooky, paranormal, things that are creepy, but I don't seek out violence and slashers, which is why, as I mentioned, that Scream being one of my first,
Right. It's kind of
a
lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And then I remember that after, I mentioned like one of the other movies that I had seen was a Wes Craven movie. It was New Nightmare. Do you remember that one?
That's one of the better Nightmare entries.
Yeah. And I looked it up and I'm like, oh, this seems to be kind of well liked, like well reviewed, that people liked it. And I think it's because it was like self-aware.
Yeah, it was like
the
proto Scream.
Yeah, well, yeah, and because the actors who were in the prior properties are in this movies as themselves.
Right.
So it's sort of meta in that way.
I think it's the same screenwriter as Scream too.
Oh,
Kevin Williamson. So
okay. Well, that makes sense. So yeah, that was those movies were not my jam when I was a child.
Sure.
but I got into Buffy post Buffy being on, and got really into that. Got into Angel. Just got into a lot of Whedon properties at the time of when I started watching Buffy. And Joss Whedon is problematic in a number of ways. And I mean, Buffy the show itself is problematic in a number of ways, but
sure.
I do still like a lot about the show. You remember that scene in Parks and Rec when Ben was having, Donna was like, what's gotten you all upset? Did they cancel Game of Thrones? And he's like, it's like, no. He's like, just do your work. And they would never cancel Game of Thrones. It's like, it's not just for fantasy enthusiasts. They're telling human stories in a fantasy world.
I love that you said that verbatim.
It's like, and that's kind of what I liked about Buffy, is that it was, they were telling, it wasn't just about vampires and the monster of the week. There was more about the relationships and the character development that I appreciated. And looking at characters like Spike, who was this like villain in one of the seasons when he was introduced, but like he continued to grow and eventually kind of became one of the good guys. And despite some of more troubling aspects to his character, but realizing that he is a vampire and doesn't have a soul, and but anyway, I big Spike fan, pro Spike. And I'm also curious about whether if there are any other listeners out there who are Buffy fans. And
there have to be. I know our dude Brian Canberra is definitely a Buffy head. I would like to say two things. Number one, I just had a Shrieker rattled raspberry, and that was very tasty. So be on the lookout for those. Ooh, number two, the paranormal thing. Yeah. In keeping with what you said about your brother Brian shouting out X-Files last week. X-Files, huge for me. Love the X-Files. Love paranormal stuff. And, related to some of the themes we'll get into with this week's record, some of my favorite stuff about that is not necessarily that it's spooky, although I like that, but it's that it's asking these big questions about faith and science and how the two relate. Yes. And I've always really appreciated how thoughtfully they took that on until they got kind of swallowed up by their mythology. But I like when a property asks interesting questions of this human experience. So, but
well said.
Thank you. As far as some of your favorites of all time, though, I'll give you a second to think about what spooky stuff is connected with you most, but I'm going to go movies. I love films.
Yes.
And I don't have anything particularly revelatory to say here, but The Shining is my favorite horror movie of all time.
Mm.
I'm a basic B. Give me that pumpkin spice latte. Give me that Shining. But Stanley Kubrick is probably my favorite filmmaker of all time. And so to see someone whose filmmaking I find so interesting apply that to a horror movie, like that can't not be my favorite horror movie. The way that he moves the camera, the way that he uses composition, for scary purposes just work so well for me. So it's been my favorite since I was a teenager. But there's a million other ones. Exorcist, another basic answer, but very, very high up there for me. I think again because it was one of those kind of few movies I remember seeing in high school in the theater when they did like the re-release, and then like sort of debating theology out on the sidewalk with my friends afterwards. Like I feel like it's asking some big, interesting, faithy questions. As we said last week, big fan of the original Universal monster movies. I think Dracula is my favorite of them. Still a favorite. Suspiria, the Dario Argento movie. There's a lot of giallo and Italian horror movies I love, but that one I think wins because of its use of color in particular. I've talked about this movie before on the pod, but the band Goblin does the soundtrack, which is incredible. I saw them play live the soundtrack during a screening of the movie several years ago, and that was wonderful. Some other favorites: The Devil's Backbone. Guillermo del Toro is one of my favorite directors. That's my favorite of his. Again, sort of like asking these questions. It's a ghost story. It's like my favorite kinds of horror stories are when they're sort of like telling a story of a particular people or cultural moments, and like it's about a civil war essentially, and it's like a war story, a story of trauma, but it happens to use a ghost story as sort of the backdrop for it. Candyman I've talked about plenty of times on the pod. Don't Look Now from the 70s, I think sort of a perfect movie. What else? John Carpenter's The Fog. I love John Carpenter, probably my favorite movie of his. It's about ghost pirates, so you can't go wrong there. The Innocents. The Thing, very, very high up there for me. I think The Fog wins out for me for Carpenter just because it's about ghosts, which are my preferred mode. I love alien creatures destroying us, but gotta go with the ghosts. And then only other one I'll shout out, The Innocents, one of my favorites. Early 60s black and white adaptation of the Turn of the Screw, and just like super spooky, and again kind of the use of the framing and how the ghosts sort of appear in shots and you're not sure if it's a ghost or not. Love that kind of stuff. So those are some of my very faves.
Have we talked about Eraserhead before?
I don't think so, but hey, big Lynch guy.
I know you're a big Lynch head, and I've heard, looking through some like the highest rated horror movies of all time, I know that evidently Eraserhead is supposed to be fairly troubling.
Yes.
And a very bizarre movie. I've never seen it.
Can confirm.
Yeah.
Wrestling with what it means to be a new parent, essentially.
Cool. Super cool.
What if your baby was a little worm monster also?
Cool. Yeah, so there's just so many of these movies that I haven't seen, and like a lot of them are movies that I've seen once and have never revisited ever.
Yeah, a lot of them are on DVD, and I have them if you want to borrow them.
Like Scream, as I've said, Blair Witch, Cabin in the Woods, speaking of Joss. Nightmare on Elm Street. I think I've maybe seen some Halloween.
First Halloween is fantastic.
There's some that interest me that I'm curious about, like An American Werewolf in London. I'm curious about that primarily because of some of the practical effects that they do.
The best.
I feel like that's kind of like what would draw me to even be interested in checking that out. Oh, Shaun of the Dead.
Great one.
Their zombie movies. I've seen some other zombie movies, but Yeah, man, it's just it's not one of those things. Like there are other movies that I just return to a
Sure.
lot, and I'm just I don't know. It's hard to say. Like
Yeah.
I don't like being scared.
Yeah.
But it's something for some people that they like to get that
Adrenaline.
Get that adrenaline going.
What about rides? Where do you stand on theme park rides?
I'm pro. I mean,
Okay.
I haven't been on a roller coaster in many years.
Yeah.
But I remember when I lived in the Chicago area as a kid, we would go to Six Flags Great America
Mm-hmm.
and hit up the Batman ride.
Hell yeah.
Giant drop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that Batman ride, that was like at the time was like the shit because you had your legs dangling.
Right. And it's like, and there's a Batman logo on the side, so
yeah,
it's Batman.
it's like this will but also what I liked about it is that you weren't just like standing in line. They created this sort of environment that felt like you're in Gotham City, like lots of fog and like sort of noir kind of setting.
I don't like rides and I'm scared of heights. And so I think there's something to this. I think most people do like rides and don't have a problem with heights. But maybe don't like scary movies. Like it's flopped for me. Maybe I think there's some sort of, everyone likes some sort of adrenaline. And maybe I like scary movies and books and theater and stuff because I can kind of like control it or something. I like storytelling and I like to be scared. So I like to be scared by stories. But if it's like, I can't control a roller coaster, so that truly scares me. And I don't need that kind of scaring, but I know it's swapped for a lot of people. But yeah, my favorite part about theme parks is standing in the queues. And if they have like worlds built out, that's the best part for me. Which is like basically, theater or like,
right.
That's the kind of stuff that I'm into, like being immersed in those worlds. Speaking of which, I think I talked about spooky puppets last week, maybe, or maybe that was just off mic. But I'm planning on going to see this theater company, Rough House Theater in Chicago. They do spooky puppet stuff, and they're doing this one this year where you like put on headphones and like go up to a peephole and observe different spooky puppet scenarios behind these different windows. And I'm like, that's the kind of shit that sounds cool to me.
You have talked about spooky puppets primarily in relation to the new Candyman trailer.
Oh yes.
Is this the same? Is this the same group?
No, that's Manual Cinema.
That's
Look, I got my hands in a lot
puppet.
of different spooky puppet pots. Okay. This show is called House of the Exquisite Corpse. The all new immersive anthology of horror told through peep show puppetry. So see you there.
That is, oh my God.
I'll probably go by myself, which makes it even more horrifying.
Yeah. When some things like this where I'm like, oh God, it's like the most John Potter thing of all time. next to like going to a drive-in theater and like watching a double feature of like
by myself,
Batman or something by yourself. It's
oh
like,
yeah,
that's just here for it. I'm here for that John Potter experience. I'm here for that John Potter Joy Boy experience.
It's a solitary adventure much of the time, but it is a joyful one.
Yeah, I haven't gone to a movie in so long. I haven't been in, like, what was the last movie I went to? I don't even remember, but I would love to go to a drive-in, but
so fun.
I feel like the window is rapidly closing for that here.
Usually October is the last month and they put a bunch of scary movies there. So
I might need to do it. See what they got playing at the
Valley High.
At the Valley High
drive. The place. Yep.
Yeah, man.
Check it out.
Yeah, bro. So we have some voicemails that we've got to get to. So we have voicemail line 872-762-4763, 8727-MAG-POD. Voicemail from our dude, Brian Canberra.
Okay,
Rumbling again.
so once again, I am recording this memo while driving. I will say, in regards to my car is a piece of crap. It's held together by some firmly placed black and white checkered duct tape.
Yes.
Which I think makes it scarific. And it's sort of the Rudy Mobile, I guess. Yeah, so let's get to it. I am not a scary. I guess I should say who I am. First of all, this is Brian, the Rudy Librarian. I am not a scary movie kind of person, which is funny because when I started reading, I really got started reading through. First of all, there were some books that were kind of like the Hardy Boys, but they were Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators.
Yes,
so it was like
cool.
the Hardy Boys, but creepy and supernatural. And I loved it. And then I read a ton of the R.L. Stein Fear Street books.
Yes.
And the Christopher Pike books. I was really into those scary books in like elementary school. And Stephen King. I read a lot of Stephen King when I was in elementary school.
Whoa.
And then I became a Christian in 8th grade, and I was like, oh, no more of that evil nonsense.
Oh, no.
I must live a life of holiness and purity. And so I did not partake of any of that stuff anymore. And so now when I see movies that are remotely scary, I am a giant chicken. And my friends make fun of me a lot. I remember going to the movies to see one of the Resident Evil movies, and there was like a jump scare, and I jumped really high, and my friend laughed so hard and made fun of me for probably 3 weeks after that. So not as fun for me now. I will still watch stuff from time to time. I watched all 3 of the Fear Street movies. And I will also say that when I was a young lad, a wee lad, some of my favorite memories, though, were Halloween related. So my dad, he was in a drunk driving accident when I was in 4th grade. But prior to that, one picture that I love of us together is he took me trick-or-treating on his motorcycle. My sister who was still of age to trick-or-treat was sick. And so I collected for me and for her. And he rode his motorcycle with like a zombie mask on the entire time, and I was Dracula, and my cape was billowing in the wind behind the motorcycle.
Love that.
Yeah.
In addition, 2 more very quick Halloween stories, and man, I hope this doesn't go on too long. But one is I went to a haunted house at Six Flags that was it was themed around like all the haunted, the scary characters from movies. So it was like Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and all that. And I was terrified all the way through it. I was probably like 6. I was terrified all the way through it. And when I got to the end, I was like, yes, I made it. I can see the end. And then the Chainsaw Massacre jumped out, and I kicked that guy in the leg like 6 times.
Oh, my God.
And I feel bad now, knowing it was probably just some high school kid who was ordered to be there. Also, around the time Nightmare on Elm Street came out, we went trick-or-treating in our neighborhood, and there was someone who was dressed like Freddy, and it was like so good that I peed my pants, and then we went home. Oh, that's my Halloween stories. Keep the spookiness coming. I dig it.
No MAG-POD for life. That's okay, Brian.
That's all right. We'll let it slide. We'll let it slide because you shared one of the most embarrassing stories.
I've never been so scared that I've peed my pants. I don't think. I hope to never be. But
no, me neither. But I want to say that I resonate with Brian a lot. We're very similar because I too grew up reading Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Of course.
And some other, I remember reading other weird paranormal, like alien stuff. And
cool.
yeah. And I don't know. I didn't have a shift where I felt convicted because I was like, oh, I'm a Christian, I can't read that anymore. I think probably what happened is I was traumatized by scary movies.
Yeah.
I just like was like, nope, this is not for me, because I don't think I'd seen anything like that before. And
right,
like seeing Drew Barrymore eviscerated hanging from a tree, you're just like,
you're like, oh, America's sweetheart Drew Barrymore, she's surely the star of this movie. Wait a second.
Yeah, exactly. She's on the cover, she's gonna be in the oh man, she's dead. Okay.
Yeah, so good.
So good. Can we just talk about Drew Barrymore for a second? I love Drew
Barrymore. One of my early most powerful crushes.
Did you
still today? Did
you ever watch on Netflix Santa Clarita Diet?
No, but it's about zombies, so it's very up my alley. I'd like to eventually.
I got into that. I'm like, this it's one of those shows that I was by name alone, I was like, this is dumb. This is dumb. And then I watched it and I got super into it.
Yeah.
And then they canceled it.
Yeah, it's too bad.
And like they where they left it on a cliffhanger at the end of like the last season, I'm like, it is such a disservice to the show. Yeah.
Maybe they'll come back and do a movie or something.
It sucks when they do that. You know, like at least give them an opportunity to wrap it up. Like if you don't want to do a full season, let them like do 6 episodes or something.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that to fans over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It sucks. And it's one of those shows where you're like, it has that same sort of vibe as Breaking Bad, where you're like, these people have a secret, things keep escalating, things keep getting more out of control. When will something break and when will people find out? And it's just like one of those shows where there's always like, it's also sort of like the show with Christina Applegate and
right
and
Dead
and
Like
Linda
Me,
Curley.
Dead to Me.
Dead to Me. Yeah, just like one of those things that just like keeps getting more more and more amped up. So
that's how Netflix gets you.
Yeah, I know.
Guess I gotta watch the next one now. Yes, Brian, thank you for sharing your spooky memories. Folks, please keep them coming in. I'm with you on man, I remember just like devouring in elementary school like youth spooky detective stories. That shit was awesome. There was some cool like junior high detective, and maybe there was some vampires or something going on in the schoolyard, and you got to figure out what's going on. That kind of stuff was very much for me. So
yeah,
I get it.
How can we forget too, John? Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Can't forget it.
I mean, this is another one of those like shows that I was like, at first I'm like, I am not into this. I
too scary.
Yeah, like when it first came out,
that intro is freaky.
Yes. So it was the very early Snick. It was like one of the first shows, and I remember that I would need to turn it off.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Before it started, because I was like, oh no, this is too spooky.
And I was like, ooh, baby. Yeah, see, even that sound is like, oh shit. Good stuff.
So good.
So fucking good, man. I remember
there was a point where I turned and I was like, I'm so into this. And I got really, really into it.
I remember thinking, like, I guess I was young enough at that point that I was into it, but I was like, this is making me a little uncomfortable. Like, I remember being surprised at just how scary that intro was when Snick premiered. And I was like, oh shit, they're going for it. So
yeah, the rocking boat in the water, and
it's all very good.
Laughing children and a clown. It's just like, like the sort of that like bluish tint to everything. It's just it's all great.
Submitted for the approval of My Midnight Society. I don't
Here
know.
for it. we call this podcast the Tale of Magnifr Pod.
Tale of the two hosts who wouldn't stop talking.
Yep. All right, we got any stairs?
Hello, my dude. This is your boy, Danny Stairs.
That's good.
Yeah, great
That's
episode,
good.
guys. First off, I gotta say I'm sorely disappointed in Andrew for his performance in the game.
Wow.
After John knocked it out of the fucking park last week.
Wow.
With his perfect score, Andrew follows that up by dropping a turd. At least he did get, he didn't get the shutout at least, but still. Andrew, come on, man. You gotta show Pod Daddy John that you can play the game too. Anyhow, speaking of the deadlines now, this was fun. I came into it a little wary. I certainly don't think I ever heard of these guys. If I did, they went, they didn't leave any lasting impression on me that I remember them. But the music was fun. I definitely agree with you guys that it would be more of I'd love to see a live show and get the whole spectacle rather than listen to this album. I'll probably never listen to it again, but that doesn't mean it was bad. As you know, I just don't listen to a lot. But if they did like a reunion show and they were going to do the whole, I don't know, maybe they'd do too much of the glam rock, but, get that early aesthetic back and have people fake murdered in the crowd, I would be so down for this exciting adventure. And I am glad, like you guys said, that there's just this little spot in the scene where we did this fun experiment. And so I thank you guys for bringing this one to light. I never would have ever known this even existed had you guys not covered it, so thank you. Unlike my normal approach, I'm going to give you my review of songs as well. I'm going to say you guys identified probably the top 4 best songs. I think John's was, I would go with John's top 3 just because I liked the difference in his number 3. A little bit more variation from kind of the rest of the song, but lyrically kind of a bummer. And finally, I wanted to comment on Vegicide. It sounded like it was going great until that abortion thing, and then it really let me down. So that's going to be a low point in the record for me. Not going to make my playlist for sure. So anyhow, great job, guys. Magpie for death. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank
Danny.
you.
Yeah, we need to talk a little bit more in depth about these songs because Nick Weber sent in the explainer cards included in the Christian bookstore version of the deadlines. And I don't know if this is genuine or not. I don't know if this was like to appease the Christian bookstores, if they're like, sure, we'll make this shit up just to like appease the Christian bookstores. Right. But some of these are such a stretch.
Yeah.
And they're such bummers.
Yeah, this sucks.
Like stop quoting Romans and like Thessalonians, like just calm down.
Yeah.
It can just be about going to the graveyard.
Right.
Like go to the graveyard. This song's a story that uses the example of zombies as the sinful world enticing you to come to their way, but their way leads to death and the graveyard. Again, expounding on the dangers of sin in the world, pulling from Romans 12:2, and do not be conformed to the. God, shut up.
Pretty much every song is about like the world tries to pull you in with its sin, but you have to look away from it. And like, yeah, like we said last week, just I don't know where the sort of line of genuineness and manipulation is, but like if you want to be spooky, just be spooky. If you want to have some elements of like you see Jesus as a resurrector and all that, that's great. But like the fact that every single song, it actually made me be more like I wasn't sure where they really stood with like, was this actually their intention or not? But reading all these, I'm like, if this really was what you meant to do with each of these songs, and like I feel much more sour about the whole thing.
Yeah. Can we talk about their explanation of Horrible Night?
Yes, and then we got to get to Vegicide too.
Okay. Well, Horrible Night is a story of a man waking up in the middle of the night only to realize he has completely drifted away from God. And he yearns to get that relationship back. And the only way to do that is to repent.
Spooky.
Oh, spooky.
Yeah, that sounds like a stretch. That sounds like a chick track right there.
Yeah, it is. He wakes up in the middle of the night, like,
I must have drifted away from God.
Oh, no, God!
I'm terrified.
It was a horrible night to drift away from God.
Yeah. We speculated on how we knew that Vegicide was a bummer. We opened up the box / the coffin on it. But we were speculating, like, how much is this truly a bummer? Well, according to this, an even bigger bummer than maybe we feared. It says, a humorous look at having a nightmare about flesh-eating vegetables brought on by unbelieving vegans hell-bent on converting the rest of the world to their sometimes contradictory beliefs. Boo. That sucks.
That sucks. Yes, there can be very preachy vegans. Let's not talk about contradictory beliefs here, bro.
Yeah, you're the zombie saying everything's about, straying from Jesus or whatever.
Yeah, this is just such a like we said, the song had so much potential. Flesh eating vegetables, like that's a great concept.
Yeah.
But it's brought on by unbelieving vegans. Like,
what are you talking about?
This in their minds, like vegans equal pro-choice atheists. Like,
right. If you don't believe in God, then obviously you're a vegan and vice versa.
Yeah. Like you can't be a Christian and be a vegan, and you can't be
possible.
And you can't be a vegan and be pro-life, I guess.
Right.
I don't know what they're talking about.
Shout out to our dude Riker, who commented on our social post about this, that Unbelieving Vegans is a great name for a punk band. So that might just be our new horror punk band.
Absolutely. Oh my God. The Unbelieving Vegans is just so, so ridiculous.
Yeah. Take that, Deadlines.
Yeah. We're going to take your, a word, like a line from your explanation of your shittiest song, and we're going to turn it into a real horror punk band.
Yeah.
And all of our songs are going to be like really gruesome and brutal, but then like they'll be all about Jesus, and then we'll talk about how they're actually gruesome and brutal. We'll just do the inverse.
The reverse. Yeah. When I said Jesus, what I meant was like when somebody gets their head caved in.
When I was talking about the resurrection of the body, what I was actually talking about was decomposing corpses.
Yeah, just straight up zombies. Nothing. There's no metaphor there.
Yeah.
Yes, much more to talk about with our album this week, as far as how faith and horror lyrics work together.
Yes,
we'll get there.
We will get there. We have some other voicemails. So this voicemail, we believe, is from Joel Hang Heartsey, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. For whatever reason, the first voicemail that you left, it's completely silent, and there's nothing in there. So, and your second voicemail is, we don't know the context to what you're talking about because you're referencing your first voicemail. So we're sorry, but we wanted to let you know that we did get the voicemails, but we just can't hear them. So if you want to call back and leave us another voicemail, and
leave us another voicemail, leave us a voice memo if you want. Joel, we're into your writing. We like your online presence. So sorry about that, but hit us up again.
Yes. All right. See what we got here.
I know it's coming. Ooh. Perfect.
Love it. Phantom Cackler bringing in some instruments,
Yeah,
bringing in some
kind of a spooky score.
Yeah, it almost is a little Halloween reminiscent.
Yeah. Do. If I heard that in like the background of some scary movie, that's effective, man. That's a good little hook there.
It's like if you took the Halloween theme and mixed it with Girls by Beastie Boys.
Yes, my platonic ideal. Well done, Cackler.
Well done.
Beautiful piece of original music for the Halloween season.
Exactly. All right, we got our boy Danny Leary, fellow podcaster, our logo designer for Magnifr Pod, friend of the pod, friend in real life as well.
Yes.
Hey, this is Daniel Leary calling up to remind everybody to go to storenb.com and search out the special Magnifr Pod spooky special October only merchandise.
Yes,
go get it.
That's
it looks
right.
Beautiful.
Yes,
the designs,
sure does.
I must say, are amazing.
Yes.
I was calling also about Blaster. So Blaster the Rocket Boy or Blaster the Rocket Man, whichever. I love this band, and they would have been the second Christian band I ever got into, because the first Christian album my mom ever bought me was the I'm Your Biggest Fan comp, and that's how I discovered MXPX. And then my second favorite song on that comp was the I'm Only Humanoid song by Blaster on there. So I'm like, oh, I've bought some MXPX records. Now I got to go buy some Blaster records. Well, it turns out, like, in 1996, you can't find their records anywhere. The Christian bookstore didn't have it. The regular record store didn't have it, and even though the regular record store had MXPX. So it took me years. Eventually, The Monster That Ate Jesus came out, and that's an amazing album. It sounds way better than their earlier songs, but I never ever got my hands on their first two records until The Anatomy of a Monster came out, and it was one of the few full-length albums I ever bought on iTunes, just because I had never been able to find those early Blaster records. The only other things I ever bought in full on iTunes were like my friends' bands to like help with their numbers. It's the only album by, a band in general that I ever bought on iTunes. But then one other thing I wanted to mention about the song Time Machine is that there's a They Might Be Giants reference in that song, like undeniably so. It's not like a coincidence. They use the melody of a line and the lyrics from a song called For Science by They Might Be Giants. It's at the end of the Time Machine song when you hear a female voice saying, "You will be killed right away." That's lifted, I'm sure, directly as a what do you call it? An interpolation of the They Might Be Giants song For Science. That song's also about like a mad scientist and aliens and like a sexy alien and stuff. That's an amazing song. And when I was on my friend's podcast, This Might Be a Podcast, I picked that song to be on one of the 2 episodes of his podcast I've been on, knowing a Christian punk band had referenced that They Might Be Giants song, and knowing I could tie that back to my podcast and MXPX memes and all that stuff. One of his longest episodes was that For Science episode, and it never came up. I completely forgot to mention it. So I failed as both and as a They Might Be Giants fan, and as someone who can give a voicemail under 3 minutes. And I forgot to end either of those voicemails with Magnified Pod for Death.
There you go.
Thank you. Magnipot.
Magnified Pod Board.
Yes, thank you, Danny. We will get into They Might Be Giants. The Science essentially covered in part on the first song on this record, which we'll get into in the second part. So we'll get there. It makes total sense to me that a big They Might Be Giants fan like Danny would also be into Blaster. They're sort of simpatico bands in some ways.
But there are so many influences.
So many. We'll get there soon. So many.
It's scattershot that they're from song to song. they switch it up so much, and I find it to be very interesting. They're pretty much the polar opposite of the deadlines, where the deadlines are like, okay, so what if this song we took the same keys and did that for this this song, and what if we also didn't switch up anything?
Right.
And these guys are like, I don't know, like what if we had like spoken word sections, and what if this song sort of like, there's just,
let's have multiple genres within one song.
Yes, it's so wild. It's so wild.
It is. We will get there.
Yeah.
I also empathize with what he's saying about like being young and in the age of physical media, being like, I can imagine hearing like a song from Blaster or seeing a video or hearing about them, being like, how do I find these guys? It's like this mythical thing, and you can never get your hands on it, which adds to the coolness. But yes, we should say we mentioned at the end of the last episode that we were going to talk Anatomy of a Monster, which was sort of their post-breakup comp of earlier songs. But we are in fact covering The Monster Who Ate Jesus, in part for the reasons that Danny's saying about it being sort of the more well-known, most kind of respected record of theirs, and also because it's like a third as long as Anatomy of a Monster. So anyway, that's the record we're covering today.
Yes, I'm glad we're covering this record because I think it sounds great. And and the other one, The Anatomy of a Monster, whatever it was called, just a lot more of a compilation, more of demos, some live tracks. This
raw sound.
Yeah, this is much more studio sound, put together, cohesive. And I overall really like what they do on this record.
Yep.
Had no idea who they were back in the day. This season and this month covering them is my first time ever listening to a full album by the band.
Same here.
So I'm glad I was introduced to them at some point.
Agreed.
So here we are. So John, those are the voicemails.
Good batch.
Thank you, everybody. Send in more of your Halloween stories. But one thing I do want to mention before we move on is we are doing a Sweet 16, as we mentioned on the pod last week.
Yes. For candy.
We posted a survey on our Twitter of that you just need to go click the link, sign into a Google account, and then rank your top 16 candies. There's like 25 candies on there. You pick whatever 16 you like the most, and then we're going to create a bracket, and we will be putting that up in the coming weeks. But we want to get more people out there talking about their favorite candies. Got to represent your favorite candies. Start, making your, I think what we'll do is we will put out the Sweet 16, and then people can make their own brackets. And then maybe if we get somebody who, if somebody gets, a perfect bracket or something, which will probably won't happen, but like, I don't know, if someone gets really close, we'll see. We'll see if we can send some their way.
Send them something sweet.
Send them something
for a Sweet 16.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, well, that's not quite what I meant.
No, I don't know. John's talking about 16. He's talking about, I don't know what's happening. Anyway.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any questions for me today, though?
John, I do have a very important question for you. Do you want to play a game?
That's a yes. That was a Wilhelm scream in case
the Wilhelm scream in our world means yes, not a suffering zombie or a laughing vampire or whatever.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm ready.
So this week,
back in the saddle,
we are talking Blaster the Rocket Man, and we're talking just more spooky things. So this week, we are going to play a game I'm calling Deploy all questions now. Just call me Andrew the Question Man.
Not the question boy.
No, I'm a man. I'm a big boy now.
I'm a question man.
I'm a question man. I used to be a question boy, but yeah. So I'm going to ask you questions related to things on this record.
Okay.
And see how well you do. See if you got another 5 out of 5 in you, John.
I don't know. Don't jinx me. Too spooky.
Do you believe in jinxes? Do you believe in curses, John?
This month I do.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. We all know Bela Lugosi for his role in the iconic 1931 film Dracula. Which of these other bits of Lugosi trivia did I make up? A, he turned down the role of Frankenstein because of the lack of dialogue and layers of makeup were beneath him. B, Lugosi died in 1956 and was buried in his Dracula cape. C, Lugosi was an avid stamp collector. Or D, Lugosi was not a fan of horror films before Dracula and accidentally ended up typecasting himself.
I am pretty certain that he did turn down the role of Frankenstein.
Okay.
That he was buried in his cape.
Mm-hmm.
And that he was not a fan of horror and ended up kind of resenting being typecast. So perhaps the man was a stamp collector, and I'm just learning that information now. Wouldn't necessarily surprise me, but I'm going to go ahead and say, C, stamp collector, you made that one up.
You're going stamp collector. Lugosi was not a stamp collector. I'm sorry, John.
Oh, my beautiful reign has come to an end.
He apparently his wife said that he had like 15,000 stamps.
All right.
Or just something absurd like that. And that he like would spend 10% of like his earnings, like of his money on stamps.
Wow.
He was just like very much into stamps.
Well, you did not make that one up.
No, I did not. And there is a quote that he said that if it weren't for Boris Karloff, he would have cornered the horror market.
So he wanted to play Frankenstein?
So no, he did turn down the role for Frankenstein, but he didn't want to do it because
Exactly.
he said something dismissive, like, you know, because there wasn't any dialogue, you could just give it to some idiot. You know, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But yeah, he thought it was like beneath his acting abilities.
Yeah. So which one is?
He's going to be just covered in makeup.
Right.
I made up that he wasn't a fan of horror.
Oh, but it is true that he didn't like that people just wanted to make him a monster always.
Well, but the fact that he wasn't a fan of.
All right.
You know.
Fair enough. I think I get a half point for that.
Oh, okay.
Mickey, let us know.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, he did originate the role on stage, I believe. So, you know, I guess he was a fan, but I guess I was focusing more on the like typecasting thing, because that's partly why he didn't want to do Frankenstein, is because he's like, I don't want to do horror. That's for like slumming it. So anyway.
All right, Jim.
Sounds like it won.
Okay, sounds like you picked the thing that was true, which was that he was a stamp collector.
Fine.
All right. Question 2. Lycanthropy.
I like it.
Very rare mental disorder. But fortunately, that doesn't mean werewolf movies are as rare. Which of these is a fake werewolf movie? A, Wolf Cop. An alcoholic cop gets attacked by an occult group who carve a pentagram into his chest, eventually turning him into a werewolf. B, Biters. 2 college friends are dared to visit a castle where it's rumored to be home to a werewolf family. But is there more to this family than meets the eye? C, The Company of Wolves. A girl falls asleep and has a dream that she is in an 18th century village that is under attack from a werewolf in this adaptation of Little Red Riding Hood. Or D, Dog Soldiers. A British military group goes on a training mission to Scotland only to discover the remains of a special ops squad that was attacked and turned into werewolves. Now, with the help of a zoologist, they try to survive the night.
I am stumped.
Because 3 of these are actual movies.
I know Wolf Cop is real.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Dog Soldiers is real. By the way, Wolf Cop sounds like something we should watch on the Patreon. Biters and the Company of Wolves, both extremely plausible. Biters sounds like something I've heard of, but that plot seems maybe like there should be a little more to it. The Company of Wolves I have not heard of, but an adaptation of Little Red Riding Hood sounds very plausible. I'm going The Company of Wolves. C. You made up, even though it might be B.
You're going Little Red Riding Hood adaptation is the one I made up. I'm sorry, John.
Ugh. Should I have gone with my gut?
I made up Biters.
Yeah, that's such a good title. That really sounds like it should be a werewolf movie, but...
Yeah, I was trying to make it... wanted to make it sound like... I didn't want... See, the thing is, like, I don't want to really go more than, like, 1 or 2 sentences.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be... get too in the weeds, but...
Yeah.
I wanted it to be, like... maybe I should have added like a rom-com or like some sort of like
sure.
Because it was supposed to be like, oh, they're actually it's actually a nice werewolf family, you know.
Yeah, sure.
It's like they're just misunderstood and they live in the castle because they're misunderstood.
I'm Googling The Company of Wolves, and I've definitely seen clips from this movie. This is a movie I've wanted to see for a long time. It looks wild. I want to watch that one for sure.
Yeah.
So shame on me.
And it's also, it has Angela Lansbury in it.
Can't go wrong there.
No, she's the Little Red Riding Hood grandma, I think.
Oh, hell yeah. The better to see her with. All
right, John.
I'm 0 for 2.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is... let's see if you can make it up on this one. This is maybe getting into a little, an area that we've discussed before.
Okay.
Lovebot may have gotten his revenge, but what about Pimpbot? As you know, Pimpbot 5000 was a beloved character from the early days of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. We've talked about a variety of deep-cut Conan sketches on the show, but how well do you know some of his other characters? Which of these did I make up? A. Hot Jesus. B. Coked up werewolf. C. Money shot Lincoln. Or D. Pubes guy.
Boy. These all sound like things I've seen on Conan. I mean, I know that Coked Up Werewolf is real. I know that Money Shot Lincoln is real. Pubes Guy and Hot Jesus. I don't remember either of those, but they both sound like things I've seen. Boy, I'm gonna say, and I don't feel super confident about it, but D, Pubes Guy, you made up.
You think I made up Pubes Guy?
Yeah.
John, I'm sorry.
Oh no.
I
Hot Jesus?
I made up
Not
Hot
real?
Jesus.
Oh, it sounds like something we definitely would have seen.
Yeah, it's a great character idea if I do say so myself. But I need to show you Pubes Guy, because this is it's outstanding.
Everybody, we are back. Adam Sandler is going to be out here in just a moment, but before we bring him out, we have a new character on the show who's becoming pretty popular. This guy has the ability, the uncanny ability, to ruin any situation, no matter how perfect, simply by saying one word. Take a look.
Cindy, I have something that I want to ask you.
Oh, my God.
Will you marry me and make me the happiest man in the whole world?
Yes. Yes, I will.
Pubes.
I do remember this now.
That word really bums me out.
Get it.
Yeah.
I do remember this.
We're mentioning him for a reason tonight, not just some self-indulgent attempt to gross people out. That we would never do. It turns out that Pubes is a huge Knicks fan. And now that the Knicks have their backs against the wall, Pubes wants to do what he can to help them win. So get this. He went to the Spurs hotel this morning and tried to distract them as they boarded the team bus to go to practice. This really happened, and we have it on film. Take a look.
Standing there in a shirt that says Pubes.
I think it's John Glazer.
Yeah, I think it is.
Pubes. Pubes. Pubes.
David Robinson.
Pubes. 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 Pubes.
I forgot about this. How could I have forgotten? That was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Jeremy Jam himself.
That's right. I just got jammed.
You
'cause I
just got
didn't remember
jammed with Pubes.
Yeah, real life people looking for autographs from this first player are looking at him askance.
Yeah. So, but I just want to show.
Money Shot Lincoln.
Yeah.
I really wrestled with my conscience on this last one, but I'm going to show it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's called Lincoln Money Shot Channel.
Gross. We're seeing Lincoln
From low angles.
Yeah, it's a completion. Gross. Yuck. Wow.
Yeah, everybody should go look up Coked Up Werewolf, Money Shot Lincoln, and Pubes Guy. Oh God, Conan was he really pushed the envelope back in the 90s, man.
It's true.
God,
Man.
I loved that. I loved how absurd, and they just they got away with so much stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, but like his hands behind his head, just
Gross.
like low angles of like.
Yikes.
So awful.
Yeah, Hot Jesus available to sketch shows out there who want to involve us. So
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, John.
I gotta focus up here.
Okay, focus up. We'll see what you know about Venus. Question 4. We don't normally get this many songs about Venus on the albums we discuss. So let's see what you know about the second planet from the sun. Which of these Venus facts did I make up? A, Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system. B, a day on Venus is equal to 243 Earth days. C, due to the extreme heat and pressure of the atmosphere, spacecrafts have yet to land on the surface of the planet. Or D, Venus has over 1,600 volcanoes.
Well, I'm no scientist.
No?
Uh,
That's not your job with the ELCA?
lead scientist.
Lead scientist for the ELCA.
Sounds cool. I believe it being hot. Sounds right. I believe volcanoes, related. I don't remember hearing about spacecrafts landing on Venus. So I'm going to go a day on Venus is equal to 243 Earth days. Which, if true, sounds like a cool premise for a science fiction or a science story.
You're saying I made up the 243 days?
Yes.
I'm sorry, John.
Oh, man. Has a spacecraft landed there?
Yes. Like,
all right.
Back in the 60s.
Okay.
But here's the thing, though. It can't be there that long. It's like only a matter of hours because
it's hot as hell.
It's so hot and the pressure is just absolutely insane.
All right.
And,
It's a trick question, you're saying?
No, it's not a trick question.
All right, fine.
The spacecrafts have landed on the surface of the planet.
But for how long?
Oh my God.
You say land, it implies a certain amount of time, bro.
Oh, does it? That's what it implies? Well, also a lot of the volcanoes are dormant. Do you want to get extra points for the the dormant volcanoes?
Yes, I would. Boy, this sucks. One for 4. Let's see if I can save some face here.
No, I think you're 0 for 4.
Okay, fine. 0 for 4. I guess I gave myself credit on the first one, which isn't real.
All right, John, you have one last chance at redemption.
You wait till next week. It's gonna be the fucking hardest quiz anybody's ever had.
Hey, I got 2 out of 5 last week, so
all right.
I didn't do great either. All right, question 5. All the basic horror heads know that Frankenstein was the name of the doctor, not the monster. But the real horror heads know the deets about Mary Shelley. Which of these Mary Shelley facts did I make up? A. Shelley wrote Frankenstein when she was a teenager. B. Shelley's father tragically drowned in her teen years, which is what spawned the idea for bringing someone back to life. C. Critics slammed the book when it was first published. Or D. Thomas Edison adapted Frankenstein into one of the first horror movies ever.
I know she was a teenager when she wrote it. I feel like there was a critical sort of backlash. People thought it was maybe like too perverse for humanity. Thomas Edison adapting it. I have seen that short Frankenstein clip, unless I'm making this up and that was a fever dream. So I gotta say, I don't remember her being like, famously she was a part of this writers group who all challenged each other during a spooky weekend to write the best scary story they could, and she wrote fucking Frankenstein. She crushed it. So I think she was just trying to come up with something spooky, and I don't think it was basically about her dad drowning, so I'm going B. You made that up.
John, in Under the Wire.
Phew.
Yes.
I made that 0 for 5. All right.
Yes.
Plausible, though.
Yes.
Plausible.
Well, there was some other tragedies in her life.
Indeed. Percy Shelley would, in fact, eventually drown, I believe.
Yes, he drowned when he was like 28 or 29.
Yeah, they were all young as hell.
Yes, and she got married very young. I think she was still a teenager when she got married, and
yeah.
Well, I think she had like 4 kids, and only one of them survived. So, lots of tragedy in her life. And I think it was what I read. She had a dream,
right,
about one of her babies that died.
Right.
That she was able to bring the baby back to life, and that was part of, I think, that was maybe part of the impetus for that part of the story.
Hey, Frankenstein, good book.
I have not read it, but there's also lots of sexism and misogyny around this, that people being like, oh, she couldn't have written this. This was her husband. Her husband helped write it, and her husband did a lot of it, and it's like, it's been a couple hundred years, guys. Let's give her a little.
They're
bit
like,
more.
Oh, Mary, you go and write a little silly story too. And she's like, yeah, fine, motherfuckers. I'll write like the most defining horror story of all time real quick.
Just like create the most iconic like monster ever.
Right.
No big deal.
That's, again, I mean, getting back to, I love the universal Frankenstein, but very, very far removed from the actual Frankenstein story, which is very concerned, again, of questions of science and faith and searching for our maker and all kinds of really interesting philosophical questions in that story. So, good quiz, Andrew. I suffered, but I'm glad I pulled that one out at the end there.
I think there's there's some speculation, I guess, about the first question, if you want to give yourself partial credit. I will say that you did choose an answer that was true, so I feel like you don't get any credits for it.
All right. But, fine. Deploy all correct answers now.
Yes. All right. So I feel like, what do you think? We should maybe discuss discuss about something about Jesus being consumed.
Get into some monsters. Get into some. Has science gone too far?
Get into
horrifying
some C.S.
debates.
Lewis.
Yes, so much C.S. Lewis. Let's do it.
Yes. So when we come back, we will be discussing Blaster, the Rocket Man, the monster who ate Jesus.
Hi, I'm Liam Hooper.
And I'm Peterson Toscano. Together, we co-host the Bible Bash podcast. Each month, we look into a different ancient story. We're curious to find insights into our own queer lives. We discuss these and share our findings with you.
You can find the Bible Bash podcast pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts.
New episodes come out at the end of each month.
And we're back, and we're talking Blaster the Rocket Man, talking the monster who ate Jesus.
The opening to that song makes me feel like we're maybe talking, I don't know, Master. It sounds like old school Metallica there for a second.
It does sound like some like Ride the Lightning
era. Yeah.
I'm not mad about it.
No,
bro, like I'm so much more into this. This album is such a delight compared to the Deadlines. I mean, some of the the lyrics are off the wall. There's lots of references to C.S. Lewis.
Yes.
There's we're talking werewolves, talking. There's a lot going on.
There's so much going on, so much to talk about.
Yes.
I'm going to be like processing it in real time with you, because I said during our little break there that I felt like overwhelmed by this band and by this album. So we'll have to go through it together. Just to start, boy, I mean, there's no question that this is a more accomplished, not to make everything about them versus Deadlines, but as far as our little mini series here, like, there's no question that this is a more musically accomplished band than the one that we heard last week. Now, the sort of realm that the Deadlines play in is a little more traditionally my kind of thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they're doing like so many things.
Yes.
And I'm again a little iffy on some of the like theology here, but it is a fascinating project. They're a fascinating band. I can't remember when somebody mentioned this, but I think we like talked about it in real time on the pod, maybe like during 5 Iron or something, that somebody brought up Blaster the Rocket Man / Rocket Boy. And I was like, boy, this sounds so up my alley. Like the kind of stuff that they talk about, address, the different kinds of approaches they take in songs, but like
the covers of the albums.
Oh yeah, it's very much my aesthetic. But like, I already know the answer to when did you first hear of Blaster the Rocket Man, because he said in the first segment it was this season, or at least when we started doing this pod. And same for me. I completely missed them growing up. Maybe to Daniel Leary's point from the first segment, harder to come by. They weren't really. They did tour with some prominent bands, but they were not a tooth and nail band. They were on smaller labels. I don't believe there are any music videos. They didn't seem to be on a ton of comps, so they just didn't make quite the same impression. But boy, are they a fascinating and incredibly accomplished and interesting band. I'm kind of surprised that they're not more of a thing, to be honest.
This is probably. I bet this is one of those bands that if you were to find a Blaster the Rocket Man fan, they would be the kind of fans that were just very into, like extremely into the band. I don't think that there would probably be very many Blaster fans that are like, they're fine. I don't feel like there's a lot of middle of the road Blaster fans. I think you're like really into it, or you're just like, nah, it's not for me. Yeah.
A band that very easily would lend themselves to like a diehard sort of fan community.
Yeah.
Following all the mythos and everything. So they formed in 1994 in Indianapolis as Blaster the Rocket Boy. The initial lineup was Daniel Peterson, aka Autobot, on vocals, his brother Dave Peterson, aka Heater Hands, on drums. And those two were kind of the mainstays throughout all the incarnations of the band. Heater Hands also playing guitar on most recordings. He was 13 when the band formed, and he was the primary lyricist for their first album, which is quite something. Michael the Man Schaus on bass and Chris Dickens on guitar. They're another band that had a very theatrical elements. They wore masks, they wore costumes, there was audience participation, they were being werewolves, they were being flies. There's a human fly song. And so they were initially signed to Boot to Head Records. Boot to Head had some prominent bands, to be sure. No Innocent Victim, NIV, and Sidewalk Slam, The Clergy. They were all on Boot to Head. Yeah, Crux. I'm sure there's others.
Did you say Shorthanded?
No, but also them.
Yeah.
They were a significant label, although more sort of underground, I guess. And they released their first record, Disasteroid, in 1995 on Boot to Head. Second record, Succulent Space Food for Teething Vampires.
I love it. It's
so good.
It's so good. And all their album covers, especially
they're great.
Especially starting with Succulent Space Food. It gives off that classic monster movie poster vibe.
Right. Kind of that 50s B-movie sci-fi thing.
Yeah.
Into it. That record was released in 1997. Daniel / Autobot took over as the primary lyricist at that point. Before their third record, The Monster Who Ate Jesus, which we'll discuss today, they switched labels to Jackson Rubio Records, which I have never heard of before today.
No.
Before this week, but they seem to be a pretty short-lived label. They also had records by Javelina Rail Company and Scattered Few. There's some other recognizable bands, but seemed like a pretty short-lived thing. I don't know anything else about it. But at that point, they kind of felt they had matured their sound, and they changed their name to Blaster the Rocket Man when they released this record in 1999. And then I think they were broken up by 2000. So it was a short-lived venture. But we should say in 2011, they released a split EP with the voice of the Mysterons, which is the band that Daniel formed after they split up. And you can find those songs on the Bandcamp of this band, Destroy Nate Allen, who put those songs out on a split as well. So they had put the split out on the Voice of the Mysterons thing, but it was very limited run, and Destroy Nate Allen asked if they could release them again with theirs. So you can find them there. Those songs are called The Detective of Nightmares and the Cast of the Poltergeist, or What Weird Forms Creep into the Big Sleep, and Death of an Android Gunslinger, a metagalactic dialogue followed by a thrilling action sequence and a tragicomic twist. So it's that's pretty perfect. And I think the songs are fun and weird and what you'd want them to be. So, that was 10 years ago now, but maybe there's more Blaster in the future. Who knows? I would love it if there was some kind of reunion. They played Cornerstone a bunch of times even after they broke up, which I would have loved to have seen. I never did. I assume you didn't see them when you were there. No.
Both of these the voice of the Mysterons and Blaster have long, weird,
love it.
My favorite of the voice one is Close Encounters of the Ominous Ape Cat, a contemplative nocturne useful for passing sleepless midnights.
It's so good, man. These guys are so clever, and they were so young too, at least on the early stuff, which is impressive. Clearly they're sort of, I don't know, little geniuses or something. They're very accomplished in terms of what they're kind of dreaming up and how they can play so many different styles and many different instruments. I don't know. You really have to hand it to them for how creative and talented they are. I think that you can prove, to your point with this record, that horror punk doesn't have to sound samey, Right. We were saying last week, I don't mind it that much because it's kind of it Misfits, some of those bands sound, I don't really mind, but it's these are complex songs. They are surprising songs. It's truly unique, but they never feel out of place in the sort of horror punk and horror punk adjacent world. They're very difficult to categorize, which makes them exciting and also, again, kind of overwhelming. Like, I just had a really hard time sort of going through. The songs didn't feel like individual songs to me, maybe because there are so many tempo changes, there's so many genre changes, there's like 3 different songs in one song sometimes, and I'm like, which one is which? And that's all fine. I just had kind of a hard time, like, I was like, do I absolutely love every single song? Is every song in my top 3, or are none of them? I just kind of had a hard time categorizing. So I have many feelings about them. That there's, like, just on this record alone, I'd say there's punk, there's hardcore, there's surf rock, there's metal, there's country, there's rockabilly, there's jazz, clear Dead Kennedys vibes.
Yes.
I feel like he definitely has a Jello Biafra vocal quality going on.
100%.
Which I'm here for. But also
there's even a start to one of the songs that is 1000% a Dead Kennedys song.
Right. And I saw in some interviews that they said that they never really listened to them growing up, which I buy. It might just be that, I mean, maybe, but it might also just be like,
they've never listened. They never listened to Police Truck once.
Sure. I mean, maybe after their initial songwriting, they got more into it, but
yeah,
whether or not it's just like these savants creating strange sounds and they're sort of like simpatico in that way, or whether I mean, even some of those like drum rolls feel very like Dead Kennedys to me. But also
just
yeah.
I mean,
right.
1,000,000,000%, right?
Yes. It's a holiday in Cambodia. That would not be out of place here at all. Yeah. Similar bands, even if like the Dead Kennedys would be horrified to hear that in terms of like, this is a pretty evangelical band, I would say. Even if they're doing really interesting things. I still think, well, we'll get into this too, but just in terms of the musicality, I also feel like they're maybe akin to different sort of genre defying weird bands like Man or Astro Man, Rocket from the Crypt,
right?
Maybe even like Violent Femmes or Primus, even just like these weird bands. I feel like that's their closest kin.
I mean, there was times where I was like, I was hearing some Clash.
Sure. Yeah. You hear everything.
Like JFA and Wasted Youth, some of like those, some of those very early hardcore bands.
Yes. Yeah, I think they pull off every style too. There's not a ton of bands that could do a hardcore song into like a country or jazz song and like be incredibly proficient at both of them. Like,
yeah,
that's just so cool. We'll get into sort of like the lyrics and the concepts behind it. But you know, I guess these are much more sophisticated analogies than the Deadlines were using when they were sort of like putting evangelical lyrics in a like horror milieu. But I do feel like they're not that different in terms of like the messages. I feel like there's some questionable sort of conservative theology, and in this case, messages about science or evolution. But again, that's sort of in keeping with the whole 50s B horror movie vibe they're going for, where it's just like, you know, those movies are often questioning like whether scientists have gone too far, that kind of thing. So I'm like,
right,
is it kind of tongue in cheek sometimes? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of these movies, this era, these questions are, the larger thing is ethics within science, and I think that's at the root of things like Frankenstein. You know,
right?
Is it ethical to mess with the dead? Is it? I don't know, but yeah, I think couching it in conservative theology there can be some bummers there.
Yeah, and again, we'll go through it. I'm not even sure. It's not like I come down on it and I'm like, boy, this bums me out. It's more just like, so that's what you're saying. And some of that was explained by the fact that this is essentially a concept album based on C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy.
Right.
Which I kind of picked up some pieces here and there. And then like doing some research, I was like, oh no, it's like every song.
Yeah.
So, and that book, I mean, that series of books is very concerned with
yes,
science versus faith and the morality of science. And those came out during World War II, when we were asking many questions about like, has science gone too far? And so I understand all of that. I'm okay with it. As a kid, the idea of like a sci-fi horror band writing songs about C.S. Lewis, like I would have been a money shot Lincoln when I heard that description. Because it's so specific and cool.
Hands behind your head. Just lots of
facial contortions. Yes, exactly. It's so cool and specific. But where I am now, as someone who has been very influenced by C.S. Lewis, is like pretty removed from that kind of theology. So today it kind of is like, interesting. And even the monster who ate Jesus, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of referring to the monster of science replacing God. That's how I sort of read it. But of course, on its face, it's also just called The Monster Who Ate Jesus, which is a cool title for an album. Sort of along those lines of their approach to this subject matter in a horror package, I wanted to read this quote that I found from Lloyd Harp, who wrote this for Indievision Music last year. And again, this is sort of like when you're comparing it to kind of what we were saying last week about a band like the Deadlines and their approach to this. He said, while themes of monsters paired with theological reflections on the new birth or the hope of resurrection in 99% of cases would come across as forced, it doesn't with Blaster, simply because they seem to embody the sci-fi and monster themes for their pure enjoyment. So it comes across not so much as someone trying to force a gospel theme into a sci-fi narrative or vice versa, but rather the coming together of two seemingly disparate passions, faith in Jesus and a love for old horror films. I thought that said it really eloquently. That for the Deadlines, we were kind of like, is this like a bit? Are they like forcing this? How much do they really believe this? Whereas like, I have no doubt that Blaster very thoughtfully and intentionally picked these themes because they were themes that really interested them, from both ends of the like horror and theology spectrum.
Right.
So with all that, give a little detail about this record and then we'll get into it. Released August 10th, 1999 on Jackson Rubio Records. It was produced by the band and the band alone, which is cool. Recorded at Clay Creek Recording Studio in Delaware.
And down by the creek?
Down by the Clay Creek. Engineered by Nick Rotundo, who also produced some Huntington's records and engineered a bunch of stuff. But this iteration of the band is Autobot on Vokes, Heater Hands on guitar, drums, organ, background vocals, Oxford Don on bass. And it's kind of hard to believe it's just basically like two people playing all the instruments and mainly just Heater Hands. I mean, what a savant that guy must be. He would also go on to drum for Squad after they broke up because they had toured together. The art for the record was by Andrea, the Horrible Deathbot, which rules. And that gives you a sense of kind of the themes here. But yeah, as we said, very much built around C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. Are those books that you read ever?
No.
I did read them in college. I know I read Paralandra, which is the middle of the three, and I believe I read all three, but like they're essentially like Lewis's take on sci-fi as a means to ask questions about contemporary society and whether they were replacing religious tradition with a science that had no morality, that was just concerned with science for science sake, taking it as far as it could. And the band references this NICE organization a lot through some of these songs, and that was like the big bad of the final of the books. But it's this huge galactic story. I think Paralandra is kind of, in my memory, the least kind of like preachy. In brushing up on some of this, the first and third seem a little more like direct allegories. It's sort of like Genesis, the story of Genesis happening on another planet again, and Satan and Jesus represented through these different sort of like aliens. But yeah, a lot of it hinges on those books, which we'll get into. I think, just the tempo changes, the song complexity, the variety of songs, I think those all sort of like define this for me. So I'm so curious to hear what you think, what your top three are. I fully am open to like changing mine on the fly. So we'll see what happens.
Yes. Yeah, this is one of those records that I feel like you could write pages and pages about, just getting into the nuances of the meaning and the books and everything. And this was like, I'm impressed by how much you have down, considering this was like a last minute change.
Really got
for
sucked
us.
into this world.
Yeah.
And I wanted to understand it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did, because I was like listening to it on a just almost like on a purely musical, primarily purely musical basis. So your deep dive was certainly bigger than mine. So I'm very curious to hear some more of your thoughts other than my more surface level research.
Well, no, I'm glad to hear you say that, almost, because like I feel like my musical notes are like pretty sparse, because I just felt like I didn't know where to start. Like it's all so fascinating. Normally I'm like, can we skip to this part? And I'm like, there's nothing I want to skip to. I just want to like hear all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, not only are there no bad songs, like I don't think there's any not great songs really. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's deploy some of these monsters.
Let's deploy some monsters. First track, deploy all monsters now! Exclamation point. This is great.
So good.
All right, we'll stop it right there for a second.
Yeah. This is the first of 3 songs within the song.
I know, right? Yeah.
So good.
I love the hand claps, the gang vocals, and then bursting out into this sort of driving punk anthem, and the harmonies are great. Just the repetition is all great. It's such a great album opener.
I agree. Especially because if you listened to Succulent Space Food for Teething Vampires, that album also ends with Deploy All Monsters. The same way that that album ends is how this album begins. The like destroy is the exact same. So I feel like that's really cool. It's like the last album ends with this like opus, and this song is an opus, and the end of this album, the closer, is also an opus. So they're sort of doing this interesting, like they almost even feel like sequels to each other. It's all one sort of big story. But yeah, this is great, and is a continuation of the other Destroy song, which is also great, where they're sort of naming different places that are going to get destroyed. in the last album, it's more like destroy Paris and stuff like that, and then this one it's more just like things that are going to get destroyed. He says like Elvis Aaron Presley at the end, so I guess Elvis is getting destroyed. But yeah, this is the first of 3 different songs in one. It's my favorite. Right after this they go into a metal version sort of, which we should hear some of that too.
It's great.
It's so good. They pull that off also. And then the last section of the song is also different.
Yes. Get some of those growls.
For another song.
I will date the girl from Venus. Flowers die and so will I. I will kiss the girl from Venus for science!
So great.
This is great.
As Danny Leary mentioned in his voicemail, that's lifted directly from the They Might Be Giants song for Science, where he says, I will kiss the girl from Venus for science. I mean, we're one song into this album.
Yeah. We're
man.
song / 3 songs into this album.
At least 3.
Yeah.
Pretty great. And I was like, is this my number 1? But it's not in my top 3.
It's not in my top 3 either.
Yeah.
Which is tough because I love so much about this song.
I love everything about it.
Yeah, I mean, but still it's hard. It's hard because there's like so much going on this record. You're like you said, it's like, is everything in my top 3?
Right. So naturally, after some punk and some hardcore and some metal, I assume we'll continue in that same lane for the next song. Wait a second.
This is Primus adjacent.
Yes, it is. No lyrics on this one. Ooh, that sounds good.
It's a groove.
Rules. It's great. If I just
It Came From Down South is the name of that song.
Came From Down South. If I just heard that song on its own, I'd be like, this is a really fun sort of jazz band. I really like that they've honed their sound so well. But nope, that's just a jazz song on a horror punk record.
Yeah, and it's only 1:24 too. So it's in the same way that the Deadlines where you could get in, get out. There are lots of songs sub 2 minutes on this record. So
which again adds to the whole thing, kind of feeling like, what is one song and what's the next? And it all kind of feels like a sort of rock opera, which I guess it kind of is. A piece of theater. I don't know.
Got some interludes, spoken interludes.
Yes, indeed. But this song is great. I love a record that contains as much as this has in its first 5 minutes. So
I agree. All right. Hopeful monsters are dying every day.
We're hoping for beneficial condition in our bodies. Beyond the temptation of variation in our bodies. We want to take a next step and what our chance said. From hope and monsters are dying every day. We want to bring them in our bodies. Something for how we hope the best thing that is the day of our bodies. They say a very one cat.
It's a great song.
Great song.
Also not in my top 3.
Me neither, but certainly a contender.
Got some. This is a little bit of a Ramones adjacent song.
Definitely some nice oi shouting parts in there.
Definitely
short
feels either. It feels like 70s punk rock to me.
Yes, so. a lot of their songs have that vibe, which is a lane I'm here for. short and sweet, like you said, some really cool guitar parts. I gotta start getting into some of the lyrics on this record. This is gonna be a long episode, but like I essentially want to read all the lyrics to the song just because I'm like, what do you make of this? He says, we're all hoping for a beneficial mutation in our bodies, beyond adaptation or variation of our bodies. We want to take the next step. We want to transcend, but hopeful monsters are dying every day. They say if anyone can, the Superman can. Still, hopeful monsters are dying every day. And then it ends with new creatures in Christ, inherit bodies glorified. Yet we carry in our bodies the death of Jesus, which is the hope of life eternal, the hope of glory. We hope in God. Which, like, when I first started listening to the song, I wasn't necessarily expecting that it was going to end with the hope of glory. We hope in God. But that's kind of the Blaster deal. So, I mean, the way that I kind of take this is like possibly critical of evolution, like the theory of evolution, or at least of the idea of sort of like transcending or circumventing the idea of God's plan, like through science. You know, one of the like space trilogy, the C.S. Lewis themes is sort of these scientists who are just godless, who they want to sort of take their bodies to the next mutated level. They want to take the next evolutionary step, and live beyond the body. And that's kind of related to this, you know, the idea of like the singularity, where we sort of outlive how our bodies have been designed, or we can create them maybe in the future to like be more linked with machines and technology. And just those are very much the concerns of like that era, I think, and what Lewis was talking about. So I can relate to it and understand it, but I'm also just like find the idea of sort of taking down evolution sort of a weird thing to get hung up on. I don't know what to think about it. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know if I read evolution necessarily in the song. I think what I'm understanding is they're taking this idea of trying to perfect our bodies, and we should do as what the Bible says is become new creations, right? You know, you're with Christ, you become a new creation, and I'm wondering if that is
I think it is
what they're trying to get at. And the new creation should be in Christ, not a scientific one, I guess. But
sure, I think you're right.
But I'm curious about the hopeful monsters part. Like, who are the hopeful monsters?
Yeah,
are these the people that are fucking around and finding out what science is, and they're the ones getting all mutated and messed up because of science?
Maybe it's what makes us monsters is the fact that our bodies do die, and like accepting that it's okay that our bodies die because we have hope in eternal life. I think that's the idea, that even though we are dying in our bodies, we have this hope with God. Whereas like they're saying the way of the world is hope to extend our bodies on this earth through non-godly means, I guess. Lots to unpack here for like a very short Ramones sounding song.
Yeah, I still dig the sound, and
it's great.
I think within the context of the band and within the context of what they're writing based on the source material, I still find Vegicide by the Deadlines to be far more offensive.
1000%. We're not opening the box today.
Yeah. I do think that a late 90s, early 2000s band needing to go back to C.S. Lewis for your sort of scientific takes. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like,
right.
If we're getting into, 60, 70 years of dated ideas around science and ethics within in the scientific communities, like maybe find something a little bit more recent to see what current science is saying about these issues.
Absolutely. On the other hand, I could see being basically like college aged kids getting excited about C.S. Lewis, because it's like asking theological questions, but actually kind of like spooky and spacey, and being like, hey, do you want to write a concept album about this book? Like, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
But to your point, the questions those books, even if they were cool or raising, were sort of like you're saying. So
Stampede.
Gonna be a hot one. Yep. Can't wait till nightfall. Me too. Out on the ridge one night, it's always strange, like coming right out of the sky. Woo! Look at it. Here comes the monster, heard of the unheard of, last out of the cosmos. I'm up to the family, it's moved to the big pack, I left it channel. Well, round here we don't take kindly to no one the well-read. And the cowboys gotta do what a cowboy's gotta do. I took my rifle from the saddle, my last suit too.
hell yeah.
Let's open up that pit, bro. The song's so great.
It's fucking great. I mean,
it's so wild, man. There's just so much going on. It's like,
So
is this
much.
like a cowboy song? Is this an Elvis song? Is this a punk rock song? Is this a Dead Kennedys song?
right? Yeah.
This song
No,
has everything.
has everything. Every song has everything on this record. Just wild vocals, but I'm very here for them. This gives me like Reese Roper vibes. He's like singing a cowboy song in a very wild cowboy vocal. Yeah, it's about space cows come down from outer space, and cowboys had to corral them and ride them out of town. I mean, sometimes, as you do, that's what happens.
Saw a rocket ship wagon driving hideous horses, had the whole team in its tractor beam.
Rules. It's great. And it's like, okay, so this is kind of a silly, fun country song, and then it just absolutely explodes and you go nuts in the pit and like, oh, it's a hardcore song, like, and then it's back to a cowboy song.
Yeah,
the tempo changes, the vibe changes, his vocals are wild. It's just like, and again, I'm like, there could be, maybe if they were doing a Deadlines explainer card, they could be like, the space cows represent Satan. But I'm like, I think
they
it's fun that
represent
there's just
sin of people trying to
turn
live
away
in
from
the
God.
war. Yeah, they wake up in the middle of the night. They're like, I fall away from God.
But I like how they're just some space cows and they got to take care of business. I don't know. It's a good time. Stampede.
Yep, into it. All right, and now on to how is this not Police Truck?
Yeah, it's that like delay guitar plus his vocals are very Dead Kennedys. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yep, it is the same thing. But it rules. All right,
it does.
How very brave up with the air is here. My hair is clear, I have no fear. Sensuous is the status of my sensory apparatus. My research is going quite well, and I've been getting to know myself. While shifting the planetary standard, embracing this land and all her grandeur will. Open arms and love, I step down. To her charms I feel defenseless, but I have dreams where it seems a body has a fly head and the fly has my head. Can anybody hear that little fly on the wall screaming? It's got a tiny human head screaming for help. It's hard to hide and they can't give a scream.
So cool.
This is my number one.
Okay, this was definitely in contention for me, but didn't make it.
Yeah, I just can't deny that opening bit, and then the bass is so good, and I really am really into his vocals, and then
Yes,
the end of this song just takes it up.
Should we hear some of that?
Yes.
There we go. I mean, incredible. I could very easily be convinced to move this up in my top 3.
Oh God, it's it takes that really. It's just so theatrical and it's so dramatic.
It is. He likes to do a lot of terrifying screams to end songs as different characters, which I'm here for. This is Human Flytrap. Our hero escapes from Venus, by the way. I agree with everything you said. A cool delay guitar opening, cool bass. Love the organ sound that comes in here. Again, that's kind of
that to me feels like a more successful use of organ than the Deadlines, because it's more sparse and it's more there. It adds texture rather than leaning on it.
Right.
Like they're not leaning on one particular thing in any of these songs. They're just it's just cacophony.
Yes.
And noise, and it all somehow works together.
There's not a lot of organ on the record, but organ feels very at home for this band. I think there's some fiddle in there even. Great vocals, like you said. This one very much concerned with the themes of Paralandra. I mean, in the book Paralandra, they go to Venus. So the hero, Ransom, who we'll hear more about later, is escaping from Venus here. It's also kind of a combination of that and The Fly, the movie The Fly, where he turns into a fly. He's got the head of a fly and the body of a man or whatever. Starts screaming. They're screaming fly over and over. I mean, it's
the song is mostly about Jeff Goldblum.
Right, as all good songs should be. Good pick.
Now on to the first untitled sort of transitional spoken word track.
No insect-like, vermiculate, or crustacean abominable. No twitching feelers, rasping wings, slimy coils, curling tentacles. No monstrous union of superhuman intelligence and insatiable cruelty seemed to him anything but likely on an alien world. He saw in imagination various incompatible monstrosities, bulbous eyes, grinning jaws, horns, stings, mandibles.
Great.
Yep. And then it sets up Ransom versus the Unman.
Yeah, we should say that quote is from directly from out of the Silent, right? It's out. Yes, from Out of the Silent Planet, which is the first in the space trilogy. Appropriate material for this band. A spooky passage. And again, if you're telling like teenage Johnny that like there's a band that's reading a C.S. Lewis quote, but like with this very spooky horror vibe and background to it, I'm like, sign me up. That sounds great.
Ransom versus the Unman.
Hell yeah.
Just a straight up hardcore song.
So good. Another one that didn't make my top 3, but listening again, I'm like, did it?
I know. It didn't make my top 3 either, but
absolutely rips.
Yeah.
Those
man,
little
my man.
the tempo changes where the drums all of a sudden just like completely change beat. I mean, again, that's like these guys have serious chops and are like have brains that are fascinating.
I'm very impressed.
This is like directly out of the Silent Planets, as we were saying. Ransom Ransom, subtle name, right? For protagonist. I wonder if it could be related to Christ's ransom or the ransom theory of atonement. Basically fights a demon, which is cool as hell. So then there's this quote at the end of the song about becoming the Pendragon, which is what Ransom becomes in the third book. There's a lot going on here. It rules. I don't know. I'm very into it.
I think it's possible to listen to this record without the context of the book.
Definitely.
And be like, this still rules. I don't feel like I need to read the book and understand what he's talking about just to be like,
sure,
just super into all of these songs. And
agreed.
You know, even if we're getting into the nitty gritty and the details of C.S. Lewis, like I feel like basing it on a C.S. Lewis work versus, I know I keep harping on the deadlines, but like if we have a very limited scope of the bands we're talking about this month, so there's going to be lots of comparisons. But like when you compare it to the deadlines where it's like, well, the graveyard is death, and it's really about sin. It's like, God, it's so boring in comparison to like, there's just so much going on here.
Yes.
And like, I don't care, even if C.S. Lewis and the books are like kind of a bummer, I'm like, this is still, they're undertaking this very interesting project.
Yeah.
And I think there's just lots of kudos to them on that alone.
Absolutely. And you know, I am a huge C.S. Lewis fan. Like, I don't want to.
So why do you hate C.S. Lewis?
There are aspects to his theology that resonate with evangelicals today that I find troubling. But also he was like not too far removed from a universalist. So maybe read The Great Divorce again, evangelicals. And no, I'm just saying, like, I think he has a sophisticated and complex theology, even if I don't agree with everything. But like, I think that's why I'm so eager to like get into all this, is because Blaster also has a complex and nuance, you know, well, a complex theology. There's a sophistication to it. There's a lot going on, and because they put work into it, I want to sort of dissect it. Yes. As opposed to the deadlines where there's nothing to really dissect. Now, I completely agree that you could easily just listen to this as a punk album and have fun with it, and not spend all your time digging into this. Like, I think intentionally they probably designed it in that way. But I do think there's so much to dig into that I also want to spend time talking about that stuff. So I think it works on both levels. Yeah, for sure. And I'm just saying, like, I don't feel like, like, oh, I need to go and read the Space trilogy to fully enjoy this record. It's like, I feel like I can enjoy it just fine without needing to go to the library and pick out these books. Agreed.
March of the Macrobes.
Macrobes. Here come the heads, the chosen heads of the bodiless men. Here come the heads, here come the chosen heads of the bodiless men. From it to man to God, by rate we plant the pot to propagate the fly. From it to man to God, by rate we plant the pot to look at the body. You could be a vessel for that. Hitting us, you could be the gateway. Macros, the time is here, the drawing near. Here come the heads, the chosen heads of the
Macrobes.
This could be like a combination between a They Might Be Giants and B-52 song.
That's a great call. Absolutely, that's what this is.
Macrobes. They're marching. Here come the Macrobes.
Super fun, really fun vocal delivery. There's cool, like, multiple vocal parts that happen at different points in the song. You also get a spoken word part about, again, NICE, which is like the evil organization in That Hideous Strength, the book in the Space Trilogy. This is another one that I'm just like, help me unload or unpack these lyrics, because it's like, this is where I get the sort of like evolution idea, the part where he's like, from ape to man to God, we like, he says, from ape to man to God, by rape we plant the pod, to propagate the fraud, to liquidate the body, you could be a vessel for that hideous strength. Leave flesh behind, there's only mind. Whatever happened to the individual? Where is his soul? And this is when they chant NICE, and then they do RAPE. So they're like equating what NICE is doing to like the rape of the earth or of the world. There's so much going on here. And this is the one where I'm like, is it about, that whole spoken word section is very much sort of about like evolution gone mad, and like, just leave your rights and the individual behind and become part of this like collective evolution together. I don't know. Again, I'm not sure, like, am I offended by this? I don't know. I don't know what I think about it. I think it's super interesting. So yeah.
Knowing where the band's ideology and them sort of using the C.S. Lewis theology as their canvas for creating this album, like, I feel like those lines are blurred a little bit.
Yeah, I think they're very much living in the world of the books, which makes me feel less like, do I feel like icky about some of this, and more just like, no, it's a concept album based on these books, so naturally there's going to be songs that explore these characters' ideas. So I don't know. I ultimately come away from most of these ones that I'm like, what's going on here? With like, ultimately it's just really fun and interesting. So
right.
I don't really bump on stuff too much, but I am curious about like, what's happening here exactly. So
it's complex. I'm not, for whatever reason, I'm giving them so much of a pass because of
sure
what they're doing is just so interesting. And plus the source material is like, right. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm able to overlook it a little bit, even if I'm just like, maybe a not very nuanced look at what evolution is, know.
Yeah.
The whole like misunderstanding of like from ape to man, it's like,
right.
All right, let's you're sort of disqualifying yourself from talking about evolution.
Yeah, there's a lot going
on. All right, Cop City sounds like a terrible place to live. Yeah,
just another instrumental surfy
surf rock, surf jammy. Yeah. So did you read anything up on what Cop City is within the construct of this world? That
I'm not familiar with any Cop City elements to the Space Trilogy. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm forgetting Cop City, but I feel like this might just be kind of a one-off. I don't know why it's called that, but
yeah, I don't know. Well,
here for some surf vibes regardless.
Yeah, maybe if the cops spent more time surfing and less time shooting people,
the world would be a better place.
The world would be a better place. And like, let's grab our boards, bro. Let's go hit the beach. Ride those barrels, get pitted.
cops in full uniforms just shredding those waves. Love that guitar sound. Sounds so cool.
Sounds
That's
really
great.
good. They did, not only are they like great musicians, great vocalists, but like they are very competent, more than competent producers and engineers.
They produce this themselves. Like it's just,
that's what I'm saying.
it's all very impressive.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, it sure does.
Love Bot's Revenge, bro.
I'm a boogie in the heart. I try to go ahead and laugh at the vibe. I try to go, I got my sights on the line. So, sing, I wanna catch my go to action. So, the big say, I'm holding the ball for you. You're holding the ball for me. I'm holding the ball for you. You're holding the ball for me. Oh, fall into my arms, yeah. Humble heat in my heart's hot. My lips are laced with cyanide. Never my mom at distant breath. On hills of oranges of death now. Hold me. Hugging and the love and who put the bomb in the bomb. Shoot, who put the bomb in the bomb. Oh, a sad man. I'd like to get hands on.
This is just out. This is outside my top 5.
It's very fun.
It's so great. There's like the beginning part to me sounds clashy, like the Clash, and then
sure, yeah,
and then it's like Elvis-y sort of.
Yes, for sure.
Then I don't know what's happening, but
there's a lot happening.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, he's such a performer. Those vocals are so fun. It's a weird one.
I'm a bogey in the heart of the jungle, in a hidden lab under vines of the tangle. got my sights on the lights of the city. I want a chemical reaction to something pretty. I'm programmed to fall for you, pretty baby. You're programmed to fall for me, pretty baby. Yeah, it's
yeah. I think I assume this is sort of a more science knows better than God and is out of control lane of songs again. I mean, he said, he's got as you said, you programmed to fall for me, little honey, but then it moves into, and great was our fall, pretty baby. We all have fallen short of the glory of God. And it's like every time they take kind of a turn like that, I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. But I guess it's more like, what have we become if we're all just robots and we program ourselves for love rather than letting what God intended happen? I don't know. There's a lot. It's called Love Bot's Revenge. So I'm not gonna take issue with it. It's a great time. So
yeah. It's, I don't know. It's imagining a world where we're no longer connecting with people. We're connecting with robots, and then it all turns on us, I guess.
I guess so. It's like maybe they were being prescient about all our dating apps, Andrew. Now we're just designed to fall for each other rather than letting God help us find each other in Bible school.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, tell that to christianmingle.com.
Yeah. Or as I call him, Lovebot. I don't know.
Or JDate for all our our Jewish friends out there.
Hey.
Anyway. Now on to Disastroid, which was one of their previously titled. Was that an album or was it an EP?
Yeah, that was their first album.
First album, okay. A 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
my number
So fun.
3.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Bro, we're like 3/4 of the way through the album. Do you have anything on here?
Not yet. Or do I? Are they all my top 3? I don't know. This could easily be in my top 3. Here for this very fun hardcore lane they're in. Anything else you want to say about it?
I don't think so. I
You just think it shreds?
I like that it shreds. Did you find all the lyrics for every song?
I did. If people are looking for them, they're on the site in Vubu. A fascinating one here. Another one I have a little bit of trouble with. Basically reveling in the idea of a Christian apocalypse, I believe. He's like, this world womb will give birth to a new heaven and new earth. Disaster, it's burning down. Open system or closed system, either way, you've missed him who created you. In Christ, all things consist. By his light, you exist another day. You can't change the course of the curse. The transformation will occur. So I'm like, again, it's cool. Immortality will be swallowed up by life when the earth is destroyed. It's sort of like, that sounds good, according to the narrator here. I don't know. I'm all for like disaster and apocalypse song, but I'm also just like, it sounds, I don't know. I feel weird about it.
Yeah, reveling in the apocalypse for your own,
right?
Your own ideology, your own theology.
Yeah.
I mean, because there are currently sects of Christianity who want to usher in the apocalypse because Jesus will return then.
And I'm hoping that's not exactly what's their perspective here. Again, maybe it's tongue in cheek. Maybe it's like that's part of the space trilogy again, that some of these worlds are just completely destroyed and they start over. So I'm giving them again the benefit of the doubt and like imagining them in sort of the context of those characters. But I don't know, a little weird, but a really, really fun song.
Weird and fun song go hand in hand with most of these.
Indeed, they sure do.
And another untitled transitional song.
Frankenstein, where have you been? In your laboratory, making something ghastly gory. In the churchyard, digging hard, amidst the tombstones, alone with bones. Did you steal the cadaver that your son...
So cool.
Yeah.
As far as I know, this is like an original poem.
Frankenstein.
Very here for these vibes. Sets up our next song well.
Frankenstein's monster wants a wife.
Yeah.
I just gotta say again, the guitar tones that they achieved so many variety of guitar tones on this record.
Very true.
It's unbelievable that they were able to accomplish all of these different sounds, from reverby and jangly to these sort of tight acoustic sounds, to surfy and to hardcore and it's amazing that they did such a good job. And this is, the 90s, before you could just like plug in into a computer and choose literally any guitar sound in the world,
Yeah. This is my number 2. We haven't even gotten to the vocals yet, which are kind of like my favorite part. So maybe we can skip ahead a little bit.
Sure.
It's noise, the apparatus to apprehend the apparatus to make the phantom corporeal substantial stuff for us to feel. Scalpel, please, make incision. Scissors, all these quick decisions. It takes a steady hand. Curse my monster, sick demand. How does she look? Do the scars show? She's all sewn up with no place to go. Save on a hellish honeymoon that ends all too soon in hell. Well, who said that? Oh, baby, how you been? Oh my, your hands so cold, but
I love that stuff. I don't know. I'm like, this is one where I'm like, I guess I love this song. Like, I guess I love it enough that it's my number 2, but I don't know. Honestly, I'm so like, I don't know what my top 3 is, but I'll say this is my number 2. I think it's super bouncy, super fun, great theatrical vocal delivery throughout. He almost sounds like Robin Williams or something. He's like doing this character of Dr. Frankenstein, and I love those like call and response, like Doc Frankenstein. Like that's such a cool old school jazz thing. I'm a sucker for that kind of jazz too. That sort of like 30s sort of banjo and like, I don't know, Django guitar sound driven thing.
It's almost like I could almost hear like Gogo Bordello covering this kind of a song.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I could see that.
Like I could just imagine someone throwing in a little squeeze box or something into this song, and it would not be out of place. It does have like sort of a gypsy punk aesthetic to it.
For sure. It also ends with him shouting, "It's alive! It's alive!" Which is wonderful. I don't know. I obviously I'm like here for like the Frankenstein narrative. So I think it's fun that he's doing a song from that perspective and really doing it all theatrical. This is another one that I'm like, I assume that this isn't just a straight up song about making a bride for Frankenstein, that there's some sort of metaphor here. There's no Frankenstein's monster in the space trilogy. But there are metaphors about sort of the process of sin. So when he's sort of like, scalpel, please, make incision, scissors, all these quick decisions. It takes a steady hand. Curse my monster's sick demands. Like it could just be straight up, my monster's making demands, or is it like the monster is sin? I don't know. Perhaps I'm overreading it, but it seems sort of in keeping with some of the other elements here. Maybe it's just about Frankenstein. Let me know what you think.
I think the last verse, there's the part where I feel like there's much to dissect. No pun intended.
Yeah.
It's also thrilling when you're willing to fudge and fake to make a killing. Still, I want to tear it apart. Stop the beating of this hideous heart. Why do I abandon my endeavor to sever, to pick up the needle and sew it back together? Oh,
yeah,
it's
right.
never ending. Can't you see? Just cut off the hand. It's offending me.
Yeah, there you go. I wasn't off in my thinking it's a metaphor.
No, there's definitely some metaphor going on in here.
Cut off the other hand, that kind of stuff. Like, why do I abandon my endeavor to put it back together? Like, why do I turn away from trying to pick myself back up? Also, shout out to Stop the Beating of This Hideous Heart, which is a Edgar Allan Poe reference.
Right. But I think to cut off this hand, it's like if your other hand causes if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off,
Yeah. But it's also about cutting hands off. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's cool. This is where the horror as possible theology thing like really works for me. I think it's really cool. So I like it.
Frankenstein.
It rules. So great. Won't you be mine?
Yeah. Who said that? All right, now on to our first werewolf song, finally.
Yes.
I like that can't pay. I like that can't pay. I like that can't pay. I like it. Don't call me murder when I mean I cannot curb this appetite, but I disturb my natural pride. So what if I'm a wolf who will die? I stay upon man and I can ride. I'll sniff another blood and I take life. If you are watching by, and I take life with mine, beat me back to die.
My number 2.
My number 1.
Yes.
So good. Such a burner. So fun.
Yeah. Those drums, the opening drums.
Yeah. Absolutely rule. Yes.
So good.
I also
what a shout.
I like it. I like Canter Be. I like it. Yeah, shouting along immediately with like some toms going. I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is in my top 3. I just I'm so into the song. The ending is great where there's like a bunch of different parts happening simultaneously. Can we hear like later in the song?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the like. Yeah, there's like multiple rhythms happening at the same time with the vocals.
Yeah,
it all feels like so high energy. Yeah, I think it all rules.
Yeah,
lyrically, were you gonna say something else?
No, it's again another one of those songs where it starts off, you're like, oh, this is a song about werewolves.
Exactly.
And then it's like, you gotta die with Jesus to know the resurrection.
Yeah, this is where I'm saying like, this is what I'm like, they don't feel that removed from the sort of Deadlines mold and stuff like this. Yeah, like you said, I was like, okay, cool, just a straight ahead song about werewolves. But then all of a sudden there's all this stuff about turning away from sin and dying with Jesus. But you know, I don't know. Again, I'm like, I don't necessarily mind that as sort of a metaphor. You know, I like a spooky approach to theology. But yeah, it does get pretty explicitly you know, he's like King Nebuchadnezzar, you got to turn your eyes to heaven. There's no way for new life to begin, no, unless you confess and turn away from your sin. You got to die with Jesus to know the resurrection. You got to die with Jesus. I don't know. It's also, it's like, and then it goes straight into I like lycanthropy. It's just like, it's just silly enough and kind of like weird enough that I'm like, whatever. It's all fun to me. If you want to use like a werewolf's transformation as like a metaphor for dying to sin or new life, like that works for me. I'm cool with it.
Yeah. There's one part in the song I feel like I'm like, I don't know what they're trying to say, but I have a sense of what they're trying to say. The Wolfman is back, don't call it a curse. Sticker on my car, read it and weep for the ones you love, says equal rights for werewolves.
I really wanted to take that as face value and just be like, it's just funny, but I'm like, I really hope this isn't some sort of dig at something that's going to bum me out.
Right. Because the song is like, you know, even though they're saying, I like lycanthropy, they're saying at the end of the song, the mysteriously missing third verse, a chorus of redeemed ones shouts the truth in unison to the werewolf. Your throat is an open grave. Our lycanthrope hero responds in despair. I know no other way to behave. The redeemed ones keep shouting in love. You must repent, you cursed wretch. The werewolf snarls in defiance. I'll not relent. Your flesh I'll fetch.
Yeah. This stuff isn't actually in the song as far as I can tell. Which is maybe why it says the mysteriously missing third verse, or they had written it and decided against it, which I think was the right call. But yeah, clearly the metaphor there is like these werewolves are just sinners who won't stop sinning, and we try to bring them Jesus, and they're just like, no, I want to keep being a werewolf.
Which makes me, the part that's like the equal rights for werewolves makes me think like,
I know.
Are we
talking about a metaphor for LGBTQ people or something like that? Yeah.
One would assume.
Yeah, which sucks, and I truly hope that's not what this is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the theology is sort of conservative enough that maybe some of our bad suspicions is what's going on. Now,
yeah,
I counter all that.
Yeah, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
It's just like when you say, you know, if you think about it in the, like I'm a werewolf. This is just who I am. Don't call it murder when I feed. It's just the nourishment I need. I cannot curb this appetite or I'll disturb my natural plight. So it's almost like this is who I am. You can't call it murder when like this is part of my natural being. I'm still part man. I've got rights.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The more you probe at it, the more it feels icky.
I know.
I choose to enjoy the fact that he's saying I like lycanthropy and just leave it at that. But I guess it is sort of saying like, these are sinners who revel. They just double down and I like living this way. I like being turning against God. That's probably what's happening here. I don't know. There's no werewolves in Paralandra or the Space Trilogy.
Yeah.
So this is purely a monster creation of their own. I think this is just they have this mode of like using monsters as a metaphor for telling stories about God. Don't fully know how I feel about them, but I like monsters and I like exploring theology, so I guess I'm here for it.
Well, you know what we're gonna do, John, for our horror punk band? We're gonna write a song about gay werewolves.
Yes, we are.
Gay werewolves for Jesus or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
What can we make power hungry evangelicals who've destroyed the world? What monsters can we make them into in our horror punk songs? The vampire metaphor is right there. So
well, sure, but I was thinking more like if we want to go with some of the obvious imagery that the former president used to talk about. He talks about draining the swamp. Maybe it could be like a swamp creature.
I like that. That's good. You think you drain the swamp, but you are just another swamp monster. Something like that. We'll get there.
We're going to send you down to the depths of the swamp.
I want to write songs where werewolves are the cool ones. All right.
Yes.
We're not using werewolves as a metaphor for bad things.
All the monsters, all the cool monsters like werewolves and Dracula and Frankenstein. They're all gonna be the badasses.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
we're nearing the end of this record.
Yeah.
Tundra time on Thulkandra, I guess.
Yep. I wanna be on the down in the hand rabbit. I wanna be on the whole an alien on this planet on my way back to Thulkandra. My Thulkandra on my Paralandra all the time. Never mind, it's Tundra time. Yeah, cozy in a cockpit, snuggle in a turret. Guns gotta bang, the best of it. North of the blast with a laser cannon. Keeps me going when I walk crystal. Man, the console, the man, the console, the man, the console, the man. My locator on the top, on the top, never managed.
This is an honorable mention for me.
Okay.
I really like what they're doing on this song.
I like the guitar sound a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. Very steeped in Out of the Silent Planet lyrics, Space Trilogy stuff here. Just kind of about that plot.
Very Ramonesy.
Very Ramonesy. Yep. Into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. Yeah, lots of terms that I am unfamiliar with unless I'm probably reading.
It's straight out of the books. Right.
Tellus or whatever, Deep Heaven and Tulkandra and Battle. I don't know what's happening, but it sounds cool.
Yeah.
Venus at St. Anne's. We got more Venus action. Ooh, yes. Everything in this song sounds amazing.
It's great.
The drums sound amazing. The guitar sounds amazing. All the background vocals sound amazing. God.
Yeah, I think this is probably my top 5.
Yes.
Really fun energy, mostly an instrumental that still somehow has a shout along part, which is great. It slows down at the end, and there is one vocal part that's a quote, a C.S. Lewis quote from what's the third book? Yeah, so that is from Ransom in the third book. It's called That Hideous Strict. But yeah, I wanted to not briefly. This episode is so long, and I'm just making it longer. But I feel like I have to read this quote because I'm just like trying to make sense of this. So this quote that he says in the song, the full passage here, it says, "When I was a youngster, all the progressive people were saying, 'Why all this prudery? Let us treat sex just as we treat all our other impulses.' I was simple-minded enough to believe that they meant what they said. I have since discovered that they meant exactly the opposite. They meant that sex was to be treated as no other impulse in our nature has ever been treated by civilized people. All the others we admit have to be bridled. Absolute obedience to your instinct for self-preservation is what we call cowardice, blah, blah, blah. Every unkindness and breach of faith seems to be condoned, provided that the object aimed at its 4 bare legs in a bed. It's like having a morality in which stealing fruit is considered wrong unless you steal nectarines. And if you protest against this view, you're usually met with chatter about the legitimacy and beauty and sanctity of quote unquote sex, and accused of harboring some Puritan prejudice against it as something disreputable or shameful. I deny the charge," and this is the part that's in the song. "Foam-born Venus, golden Aphrodite, Our Lady of Cyprus, I never breathed a word against you. If I object to boys who steal my nectarines, must I be supposed to disapprove of nectarines in general, or even of boys in general? It might, be stealing that I disapprove of." I include all that to say, I think the point of that passage in the book is to basically be like, oh, like this is the downfall of society, like societies that say like, it's okay to have sex, because he's basically being like, well, we don't give in to all our other disgusting impulses. We keep a handle on them. And you're saying that we should just let sex go. And he's like, don't say that like I have a problem with sex. I have a problem with the way that you society are using sex. I think that's sort of what it is. So I just like find it odd that that's obviously it's in the book and they're exploring the book, but it's like to have that be the sort of like one vocal part that's included in the song is just kind of a strange choice. It just kind of doubles down on the like this guy being like a progressive culture. They call me a prude, but like anyway, it's just I just wanted to read that for context.
You know what? Yeah, we should be able to have sex if we want.
What? You sound like one of those scientists, Andrew. Have you forgotten the Lord?
One of those godless scientists.
What's just next?
I'm just going to be one of those gay werewolves next.
I guess so. Equal rights for werewolves. Yeah, I do want to put an equal rights for werewolves bumper sticker on my car.
Yeah, let's get some Magpod equal rights for werewolves bumper stickers.
That's pretty good.
All right, let's do it. We're doing it. We're unequivocally doing
it. Yes.
Equal rights. I don't want people to think like we're making fun of other rights.
No, I know it's kind of tricky territory here.
But even still, deep cut. Equal rights for werewolves. All right, Beehive, behave, baby. Nobody's made an Austin Powers joke in the last 20 years, so here we go.
Fun.
Yeah. It seems to me some sort of you're maybe like a slave to the system or something like that.
Yeah, I think
Queen Bee says Queen Bee says, "King me, baby. Her royal monstrosity hovers above me. I suffer the sting. Beware." And then those worker bees buzz, buzz, buzz. No one knows why. It's just because beehive behave.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the books about sort of like this hive mind. We're entering this sort of like collective conscience, and they're sort of like, what about the individual? Like we're giving ourselves up to just join this like next evolution where we're all just like one spirit or whatever. I think that's what's sort of happening here. I mean, he says hive mind is hope for mankind, flesh begets flesh. Having said that, really fast, really fun, great old school punk sound. Yeah, that's how I feel about most of these songs, which is why I was saying I was like overwhelmed by it, just because I'm like, musically I love every song. Lyrically, most songs I'm kind of like, okay, like working through it, trying to understand it and understand my response to it, but super fun regardless.
Yep. Should we conclude this episode with Baby Unvamp is making a comeback?
We should.
The 7.5 minute epic.
It's an opus. It's an opus.
This is the most Ramones song on this record.
It is. Perhaps that's why it's my number 3.
Okay.
I feel unconfident about making it number 3. But very Ramonesy vibe. I like that 50s style sound. I just find that pretty irresistible. However, once again, nothing that we heard there is the reason why it's my number 3. Could we go to like 3.5 minutes or so into the song?
Yeah.
That's what I find. I just find that irresistible, where there's like multiple shouty gang voc things going on. I feel like it's doing what they do best, sort of distilled in that part where it's like he's like alive, we're dead, like theatrical, but then there's also like I like it's great. Now this one has some tough lyrics as well. You know, I think basically the metaphor is like we were all once these sinners, and he's using women here specifically in this metaphor. And now, you know, we're reborn as vampires / alive in Christ. Now we're dead to our sin, but he equates sinners to baby vampires, but also sluts and whores. Like he says that verbatim. You know, I don't know. I guess I'm here for the general metaphor, but when he's like, all we little unvamps, once we're sluts, we're whores, we're tramps, but now we are the bride of Jesus Christ. Having said that, when he's like, alive in Christ, we're dead, I just think it's really cool. You know, there's a lot going on. This is similar to the closer from the last album in that it's sort of like a multi-part opus. Again, it goes on for quite a while, but I can't resist. I like those harmonies. It's Misfitsy, it's Ramonesy. There's like that cool call and response gang vocal quality. I feel like it's a good bookend to the opening that felt similar with that like gang vocal call and response thing. So I'm sort of tentatively putting it as my number 3.
Yeah. She's growing, she's teething, and one day she'll bite you till you're dead. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm sort of like, there's so many metaphors going on. I don't know who's biting who exactly. We're the baby unvamps, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't like the idea of like comparing. It's like so they're sluts and whores, but they're babies and teething.
It's weird. There's
Like,
a lot going on.
It's just kind of mixing metaphors here. So like they're slut babies. Is that what you're saying? I don't know.
Yeah, just little slut babies.
That's our sophomore album.
Yeah, that's our other bumper sticker line.
Justice for slut babies.
This is like what I do with every song, though, where I'm like getting into the minutia, and then I pull back and I'm like, but it's called Baby Unvamp. I'm like, that rules pretty much. So, yeah. And then even the hidden track has like 5 different things in it.
Yeah.
There's a voicemail about t-shirts. There's like a monster singing. There's some like contentious talk during a band practice.
Yeah.
Harmonized synthy macrobes. You know what this sounds like?
That's some Reese Roper.
Exactly.
Fucking shit.
God
damn it.
Sounds exactly like the slowed down Reese.
Yeah.
The
best.
Just gunshots that end the whole thing. There's so much going on. They're like mad at each other.
What's that to you? Just let you know how pointless it is. Okay, thank you. See? What do you care? You told me. I said okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps the brothers arguing. We have to push past 3 hours at this point, probably. I don't know, or we're close to it at least. But there's just so much here to unpack. I'm so happy to know about this band. I have many complex feelings about this band, but honestly, like musically, creatively, they're one of my favorite bands we've ever talked about. So I have just a lot of feelings. I want to know what everybody's feelings are.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to enjoy, a lot to love, a lot to be endlessly impressed over. And then also a handful of things that are, you squint at. You're like, so is this them? Is this C.S. Lewis? Is this
the like toxic culture that all the bands we've covered have been a part of that occasionally we need to unpack?
Yes. I mean, there's probably a sprinkling of a lot of things, but
yes,
there's still plenty to love in this.
Totally. Super, super fun to go through. I think this kind of like epitomizes why we wanted to do this little fun one-off month where we get into this stuff, because it's like the horror punk Christian genre is one worth talking about. And if you're going to do it, talking about a band as successful as Blaster is something we need to do. So very curious about people's thoughts on this one. You can let us know what you think at Magnified Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Subscribe to the pod if you haven't already and give us a rating or review. We will read your Apple Podcast review on the show. We need some more of those. We haven't done that in a while. Email us at magnifiedpod@gmail.com.
You can leave us a voicemail at 872-762-4763, 8727-MAGPOD.
You can support us at the Patreon, patreon.com/magnifiedpod, where we'll have some cool bonus content coming soon. You can also pick up some of that sweet aforementioned limited run merch. Get that Magnifrite Pod merch over at magnifiedpod.storeenvy.com.
Some cool stuff over there.
Shirts, hoodies,
posters,
water bottles, posters can all be yours.
And then
Ouija boards? Can we get some Ouija boards?
We'll get some equal rights for werewolves.
I mean, I'd like that somewhere in my house, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks to Danny Leary for that artwork, and thanks to shadow producer Jason at Unoriginal Vinyl. Well, Our time in the pine box is over for this week, boils and ghouls. We'll be back out of the grave next week when we'll discuss grave robbers. You're all gonna die.
I like that candy bread. I like that candy bread. I like that candy bread. I like it. Don't call me murder when I bleed. This is the madness I need. I cannot curb the stuff inside, but I disturb my natural pride. So what if I'm a wolf who will die? I see a poor man and I got right. I'm sniffing on the blood and I'm fine. If you are walking by, and I just not goodbye.
For more shows like this one, visit rockcandyrecordings.com.